Or okay.
We start over there.
No.
Okay. Okay, the minutes. Everybody had a chance to look at them. Any questions, concerns? No? Everybody's okay with the minutes? Have somebody make a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes, Dave.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
The roll call, we still need a roll.
Roll call, yeah.
Herman, yes.
Hideko, yes.
Steven, oh, Kathy's here. Okay, Stevens, yes.
Paulson, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you all saw that chat, but Kathy's going to be a little quiet today. She did have some, she was at the dentist, so she won't, we'll take her, I don't know, just take her vote. I guess.
You can wait.
Give us a thumbs up. Yeah.
All right, so we approve this. Do we want to go to public participation?
Yeah, if there's anyone here who wants to speak for public participation, not on any agenda items. Right. So I don't see any hands necessarily. Okay, yeah, I don't think there's any public participation.
All right. So we'll get on to the first item here, which is Reardon Park design.
Right, so we have Weston and Sampson back with us for a third and final night to talk about the design process that we've undertaken over the past couple of months. As people will recall, we had 2 design meetings where we had a chance to talk about some of the things that we'd like to see in the park and do some visioning exercises. We've also had an opportunity to participate by survey, rank survey, to talk about amenities that, again, people would like to see in the park. And this is a rollout of what was discussed and all the work that has been put up into the planning to this point. So with that, Brandon, take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. Thanks everybody for having us back again. We're excited to be here. I'm going to just go ahead and Jim, if it's possible,
Oh, yeah.
you let me share my screen.
You should be all set now. Yep.
Yes. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the third community meeting. As Jim mentioned, I'm Brandon Kunkel with Weston and Sampson. I'm here with my colleague tonight. Just give me 1 minute. I'm having a little bit of challenge changing my slides, but we'll get through it. That's what I needed. All right, great. Let me just adjust real quick. So, okay. I apologize for the technical difficulties. You would think after 2 years we'd have this figured out, but we'll get there. So, as I mentioned, we'll do a little quick, if folks don't mind, just for the background noise, for the courtesy of others, until we get to the question and answer session at the end. Just keep your mics muted. I don't mind if your cameras are on. I'm happy to look at faces. It's great to see everyone. I wish we were able to do it in person, but it's also great to have the flexibility. So we welcome everyone tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's our agenda for this evening. We'll quickly reintroduce ourselves again. I'll walk through what we heard last time, the results of the survey that Jim referenced earlier. We have since also met with Eversource and learned a lot about their requirements. And then Amanda, my colleague, who you folks have met. We'll walk you folks through the great stuff of the master plan, the playground concepts, which will be the phase 1 portion of the project. And then we'll open it up for discussion and talk about the next steps. Jim Snyder, Director of Parks and Recreation, has been amazing with Jim Dwayne. Both of those, the Jims, have been awesome and just really fostering the city and really making sure that we stay on task and that we're really bringing our A game to the table for everyone. As I mentioned, Brandon Kunkel, I'm a practice leader at Weston and Sampson, and I work alongside my colleague Amanda Gall, who has been leading the design efforts on this project. So here we are tonight, May 18th at 7 p.m. We'll be talking about the preferred master plan and the phase 1 proposal. Please keep in mind, this is a master plan. And if you folks are not aware, a master plan is really just a guiding document. It is not permanent in writing, just where we're at in the design. It's making sure we've heard you correctly. We have everything generally as you see fit. No major changes, but like it's more of just a guiding document as the city moves forward through the funding process. It gives a bit of a roadmap. It allows them to go out, chase funding opportunities with a vision now that they have that in hand, and hopefully it's able to get implemented soon. Following this meeting, as long as have hopefully hit all the marks, we will then dive straight into design development of the drawings for phase 1 and focus in on the playground area specifically. And then we'll, depending on where we ultimately end up with the design, and we can talk about it a bit this evening, enter into permitting in July, go through the permitting process with the city if it's needed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then September, we intend to wrap up the phase 1 drawings. And then really that allows Jim and Jim to really champion the efforts of fundraising and securing the funds to actually build the phase 1 part of the project. So what did we hear at the second meeting? We worked through the master plan concepts. We talked about the preference locations of the playground be set away from the road, more in the center of the site, the desire to optimize the amount of parking, trying to be more efficient with it, the desire for accessible walks at all park entrances. Would like to home run hit distance to be considered when orienting the baseball field. And that was in relation to the proximity of the playground, additional amenities that we'll be discussing in a bit. And then also in relation to the abutting neighbors and environmental resource areas. Interests expressed for a full basketball court, as you folks or many of you are aware, there's only a half court now. Potential for tennis courts and or pickleball courts. And then there was a little bit of concern about the noise level that does come with pickleball inherently, just given the rackets and the plastic ball. Explore the option for an accessible connection between the park and the rail trail. And I guess at the end, I might open it up to Rob MacArthur from the Conservation Commission, if he would like to chime in and potentially talk about some of the trail stuff that may happen in the future. The playground, the play equipment pieces that we showed as precedent, a lot of the folks were drawn towards the shade tree style play structure, which we'll show again in a bit. And then just be cognizant of the Eversource restrictions, which we will be talking about. They like to cluster trees structure, but not the metal slide. You guys like the sand and water play equipment and reference the Cambridge Common as a good example. Concern expressed about the noise level for musical instruments and the neighbors. and the desire for accessible swings. So we'll walk through a series of slides to discuss the results of the survey. We had 66 total responses, which is great. Demographically, what I thought was really interesting, of the 66 that responded, 90%, 97% of people walk within 5-minute walking distance, which is great. Obviously, this is a loved park by the adjacent neighborhood, and it's great to see that people are walking and making use of the neighborhood and the park. And I think that was really the catalyst for the walking loop, which we'll talk about in a bit. 45% were between the ages of 35 and 54. 27% were 55 and older, and 18% were between the ages of 18 and 34, just to give a sense of who all responded and the ages. And so if it's skewed because of a certain age group, but I think we got generally a good cross-section of people for multi-generational park, which is exciting. 55% visit Reardon Park a few times a month. 33% visit daily. I mean, that's pretty exciting. A third of folks visit. And then 12% visit a few times a year. And then, as I mentioned, 89% walk to Reardon Park. So even outside that 5-minute walking distance, people still are walking. 6% bike and 5% drive, which is great. The activities, a lot of responders like to walk or jog. When they visit Reardon Park, 45% use the playground, which we've experienced firsthand through our various site visits. 40% play with their dogs and attend community gatherings or neighborhood gatherings, and 29% play basketball. Related to the playground preferences, 83% preferred the traditional swings with the group swing bay, which we'll talk about in a moment. 69% preferred natural themed playground concepts. 43% ranked the large log obstacle course as their #1 complementary play piece, which we'll show. 42% ranked water sand play as their #1 sensory item. And then 32% ranked the slope play as their second favorite complementary play piece, which we'll walk through in a few slides. So the question, what are the following activity, recreation amenities would you most like to see at Reardon Park? So 68% of responders want the Little League baseball field. And I think you'll see that tonight. 61% want a full basketball court. 51% wanted fitness equipment. 43% want pickleball, and 40% responded that they would like additional court games. The comfort level with the noise being created just through new amenities and the potential for additional noise. So musical play, definitely a concern. Pickleball, also a concern. And then basketball, which was a little bit surprising, but totally understandable. Concept preferences, 76% like the walking loop the best. 70% of the responders like the location of the playground in option 1. And Amanda, if you don't mind, while I work through the survey with these people, are you able to just, in case it comes up later on, have those concepts ready for reference?
Sure, I can get those up.
Thank you. 60% like the accessible walking path in option 3. And then other preferences, 51% and above are comfortable with noise associated with musical play. And then 51% prefer lighting for evening use as long as it's shut off at a reasonable hour. So Eversource site constraints. Amanda, did you want to take over from here? Great.
Go over this. So during the planning process, we met with Eversource to better understand their restrictions within the utility easement running through the site. A few notable items were discussed. one of which was what can we plant? So this slide goes over their basic rules regarding vegetation, and it's not in our favor, unfortunately. So they have what they refer to as a wire zone. This zone pertains to everything under the wires and also includes a 35-foot zone extending out from the wires. Within this zone, only low-growing plant communities dominated by grasses, flowers, ferns, and small shrubs under 3 feet in height at maturity are permitted. So as you can see, the zone shown in red includes most of the park. There are trees allowed in the wire zone, but only if they previously existed and are 15 feet tall or less at maturity. All others will be cleared by them, which I'm assuming is what occurred previously based on the remaining trees left at the park. So this does put a wrench in our plans to plant more trees. If you go to the next slide, we could talk about another major restriction that has impacted the design, which is their rules on where structures can be placed. So they allow no vertical structures within 50 feet of each pole. Their reasoning includes maintenance, access, and potential pole replacement. So the image here shows the location of each pole within the park, and the red shaded area indicates the 50-foot no structure zones. Although it's not as cumbersome as the amount of space the wire zone takes up, it does limit where we can propose certain elements, all of which we've considered during the design of the preferred plan. So I guess that leads us into the next slide, which is the preferred plan. So taking notes from the input collected in the public survey and the restrictions put on the site by Eversource, we've developed this preferred plan. Starting with, is that the next slide?
I'm sorry. That was the order. Let me do something real quick. If people just hold on. There we go.
Okay. Starting with the playground, we've meandered the shape around the pole offsets, which you kind of just saw, but we'll bring up again later. And we've also adjusted the grading to ensure it is buildable. So the location that we have in this plan was favored in concept 1 and also allows for a small vegetative buffer between the playground and the street. The grades in this area are a bit more dramatic. So it allows for more slope play on the left side with an accessible perimeter walk that leads down to it. And on the right, you'll notice a couple of retaining walls. These were needed for the grade, but can also act as a seating area and a hindrance to the little ones that want to run towards the street. It's kind of a replacement for a fence, if you want to think of it that way, but not as direct. So we'll get into the details on the play equipment a little bit later. But moving to the right, we have included a water play area, which has it was a big hit according to the survey. And it is located in a shaded area and somewhat separated from the playground for a few reasons. One is for safety, so it deters the tracking of water onto larger play pieces in the playground. And it can also serve as a quieter space for those who might want a different sensory experience than what's offered in the playground. And then heading south, we've situated the courts closer to the parking area, but still provided a planted buffer between the courts and the parking. In the court area, there's a full basketball court and a pickleball court. We would recommend that the courts have some fencing between for separation, but that is preference and could be removed if it's not desired. There's also room for a few blacktop games in the remaining surfacing. And you'll see on the left, the courts will be bordered by terraced walls, which can also be used as seating, but the main purpose was to accommodate the grades. So the paths around both the playground and the courts form 2 accessible loop walking paths. And as you approach the south end of the court area, you'll encounter the first fitness pod on the right in a pavilion shade structure on the left with some picnic tables. The pavilion is situated between the bocce court and the basketball courts to act as a shaded rest space or a good spot to have lunch and play some bocce with friends. The second fitness pod is located along the walking path south of the parking area. The Little League field is essentially in the same orientation. It's just slightly shifted up to provide space for a connecting path along the right foul line. Spectator seating is also provided just south of the bocce courts. Additionally, a small plaza area with a kiosk sign is proposed at the head of the trail, which not only can provide more information on the trail system, but also is a good indicator that there are trails there that can be accessed to the park. Lastly, we've included additional parking across the street at the north end, which adds 13 spaces to the 11 that are in the park property. Based on the survey, most folks walk to the park, but I'm sure this parking will be utilized during the Little League games or community events. And in terms of proposed planting, we're a bit restricted with the planting of trees, but open lawn areas are mingled throughout, as well as planted shrubs to buffer the parking. You'll also notice we're proposing a meadow habitat along the northwest edge of the site. This falls within the Eversource rules and provides a more naturalized area for small critters and wildlife. So we go to the next slide.
That's right. We were slightly out of order. There we go.
I think
Is that
I
right,
think we need
Amanda?
to, no,
I'm sorry.
it's okay. There we go. So this next graphic shows an overlay of the Eversource restrictions on the site, which definitely informed the design a bit. So as you can see, we pushed the limits of the no structure zone as much as we could regarding the playground and the courts. And the walls have also been strategically laid out to avoid these zones. So now we can go to the next one. This was just to show how that was really
Okay.
kind of maneuvered around. So this is the proposed phase one. So this option includes the parking, the playground, the water play area, the entrance plaza, and a loop walking path. Now this would remove the existing half basketball court that is out there, which would be replaced in a later phase. Although that's not desirable, this option is the minimum cost and disturbance to the site, but further conversations will be had with Jim and the city regarding possible alternative solutions to losing the half court. So now getting into the preferred playground. Yes. So this design, we've included the pieces the community expressed as their favorites in the survey, which include the large tree cluster structure, the belt and barrel swing, the large log tangle, which would descend down the slope, an embankment slide, an additional slope play, as well as a log balance and the universal carousel, which was not considered in the survey, but adds a clear visual that it's an accessible playground while maintaining the same play value as the seated spinner that we previously showed. Also depicted is a potential surfacing pattern. It was inspired by natural tones and topography of the slope, and it's kind of a play on a river waterfall type situation going down the slope. So if you go to the next one, we broke down what each piece offers into two matrices. The top one identifies the 5 types of play which make a playground inclusive: social, emotional, physical, sensory, cognitive, and communication. We've broken down the pieces that fall into each category, and most of them tick all of the boxes. The accessibility table below identifies the amount of accessible elevated components and ground level components in total, and what we must meet or exceed which we do exceed the minimum requirement. So with all of that out there, I guess we can open it up for discussion.
So, not seeing any hands up or anything?
I guess perhaps while people are getting their thoughts together, and there must be a question or two. So really, as I mentioned earlier, the next steps are to take any feedback we receive tonight, make sure we're hitting the mark with you folks. Just keeping in mind, you know, this is not a Weston and Sampson park. This is a city of Framingham park. It's a neighborhood park. We're just really here to help the vision come to life. So, you know, we want to make sure we're hitting all the marks. And then ultimately, we'll get back together with Jim and Jim. We'll obviously, we live in a real world where budgets are a real thing. And we'll be working with them to make sure we're in alignment, setting them up for success to go out and fundraise or chase grants, however they are able to fund this, go to city council, lobby for some funding, get it into the next cycle of improvements. The idea is to be shelf ready so that when the funding does become available, there's no time wasted wrapping up drawings. They're able to go out, put it on the street, get bids, and start construction as quick as possible. So we'll be going through construction documents, preparing specifications,
Brandon, I'm not sure why, but you're sort of fading in and out. We do have several hands up, a couple of commissioners and residents.
Okay, great.
Do you want to start with the commissioners first? Bob Berman?
Hi, thank you. Really great presentation. I've loved kind of being like watching this process from all the meetings, and I love a lot of the ideas that are in here. I'm wondering, and I apologize if I missed this because I had to transfer from my car to my office during the middle of your presentation. But in working with Eversource and understanding that they have some limitations, that we're trying to push those limits a little bit where we can, is it possible to get kind of a site approval from them in writing before we move forward with something, so that we would have
Yeah, so it is definitely, and that goes into the permitting that I mentioned earlier with the schedule. So just to be aware, there aren't any, we're outside any of the Conservation Commission jurisdictions. So we won't have to do that for phase one. It will be impacted in phase two, but because we're only focused on phase one at this very moment in time, we are outside the conservation jurisdiction. Doesn't mean we don't want to be sensitive to it, but regarding Eversource specifically, they do have a site plan review process. We would submit to them, they would sign off or have their comments, I'm sure. And then once we have something in writing, then we're usually pretty good to go.
So we have sent them this plan, and they've also expressed that they don't really want to put it through their review team until there's a detailed grading plan associated with it. So we would probably only be able to submit phase one during that process.
Tony Tolson has a question.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, great presentation. I was just curious with the survey that was done with the 11 parking spots I see near the basketball court and the additional 13 spaces up on I'm gonna butcher that road, but avenue there, Lackledge, I believe it's pronounced, but I was just
Laclede.
curious. Oh, sorry, thank you. I was just curious if there were any additional questions about parking other than the spaces that are gonna already be provided.
So, and I would ask neighbors and abutters and other folks that joined in on the second meeting to chime in. Our understanding is that, in general, you know, the parking is pretty good because most people walk. The trouble becomes during particularly Little League season. And while it's a relatively finite period of time, it is, and it's primarily during those 6 to 8 weeks or 12 weeks. I'm not exactly sure how long the season is, but during the games and practices where parking becomes an issue. And, you know, I don't know if that's a enforcement thing with the city or because there's really nowhere else to park, just parking on the road. I know there was some concern expressed. Just given all the amenities that were requested within the park and the constraints of Eversource and trying to maintain the existing oak trees that are there, we were limited to where we could put the parking. Eversource was willing to allow those 13 spaces on the north side, which is great. So we were able to pick up definitely more parking than is there now. But, you know, I don't know if 24 spaces is enough to account for the Little League season or not.
Okay, I'll take the two hands that are up first, and then there are several questions in the chat, which I'll read. Meredith?
I was just curious, what if we were to do this as it's proposed right now? What's the ballpark budget for that, if you have any idea?
Sure, Amanda, do you want to chime in on that? And I guess before she gives the big number, we all fall out of our chairs. Just know that, one, we're taking into account current prices, and if folks are in the construction business.
I won't hold you to it. I'm just curious.
No, I totally get it. But the construction industry and you guys see it at the gas pumps, inflation is a major factor at this very moment in time. And we are using current pricing because that's the most accurate that we have. We're also carrying, just given where we are in the process, coming out of a preferred master plan, and we haven't gotten into those details yet. So we're holding a lot of contingencies. Right now at this moment, we're holding a 25% contingency. So, and that's just, we would expect as we move through the design process to refine that number comes down. And then, you know, wherever we ultimately end up at. But Amanda, do you want to give us the estimate on the phase one? And I'm not sure if folks are interested in the potential overall park cost.
Yes, so phase one is just a smidge over 1.5 million. And the master plan, as it's shown, came to about 3 million.
Okay, for hands, I have Jeff Shearstone was next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could
Yes.
speak up a little, please.
Okay. Yeah, you guys have to work with a lot of constraints here, so thanks for all that work, kind of shoehorning everything around Eversource. It looks really good. I guess my one question I have is why 2 phases at this moment? And with, you know, kind of why I'm asking is just because I just think of Eversource as a huge bureaucracy, and would there be an advantage of trying to push this all through in one phase? Just to only if because you have to go to Eversource once, which I imagine could hold things up. But why what phase one versus in phase two, I guess is my question.
Sure, Jim, I guess I'll
Yeah, I'm
let,
happy to answer that if you want, Brandon. Yeah. So really it's, so we're putting together ideas and a proposal. We get ideas all over the place all the time for parks, for gardens, for improvements here, there, and everywhere. So what this design process, we decided to look at the park as a whole and to look at all of the concerns that the neighborhood has with the park and what ideally would the neighborhood like to see. At the end of the day, we'll be working closely with the CFO and the mayor and to see where that falls. Later on in the meeting, we'll be talking about a priority list. We have right now 37 capital items that are in the queue somewhere. And what ends up happening is we look at a variety of things. We look at, public safety, we look at accessibility, we look at environmental justice areas, Title IX compliance. We solicit input from the parks commissioners, the mayor, the city council, and the school department, and of course the residents and the neighbors. And then it comes down to really, to available funding and also, capacity for the department to take on the project. So I think in the perfect world, what we're doing is putting a plan together that works for the community, for the park. When it comes to paying for it, we'll put it up against the city. We'll put it up against all its other priorities, and then go from there. So I think the reason why we have as a backup plan kind of this alternative or phased approach, because the city may be willing to take on 500,000 or 600,000, maybe $1 million now, and maybe $1 million a year from now. It may not make perfect sense, in terms of getting the park done, but to the CFO and the people that do the bonding and do all those different things, it might make sense to package it a little bit different way. So I think that's why we undertook this process. We want to show the whole park and what it could be. But when it comes to paying for it and putting it up against the other priorities of the city, it may get broken down into a phased approach, like we've done with other projects at Cushing, at Butterworth Park, at Bowditch. A lot of things have been done incrementally.
Okay, thank you. I had one follow-up question, which is if it were to be done as a phased approach where phase one goes forward first, would the existing structure and playground, which is there right now, remain? Because under what you showed as phase one, it really looks like we'd lose the basketball court and gain a new playground. But it almost looks like the existing playground structure could stay in the meantime. Is that the case, or would we lose the existing structures?
Well, I think we'd have to take a look at those structures. Some of those were definitely failing. Some of the walkways were definitely not accessible. It offers some challenges there. So, I would imagine the city would want to remove things that are unsafe. So we go out there and take a look to do that. It also, if it makes sense to remove the playground, it also lays a clean slate for phase two. So it could be an opportunity to then move into that phase two a little bit quicker if you didn't have to deal with the demolition, phase at that point. Again, we try to package these designs in such a way that, we can still get it done, a variety of different ways. So I don't know, I would imagine a majority of the equipment, would come out just for safety concerns. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Sure, no, that's helpful. I just didn't know if there was a way to kind of keep the essence of the playground that we have now all in phase one, and then roll some of the
kind of other improvements into phase two. So what I'm thinking is could phase one be the playground, basketball court, pickleball court? Phase two is the improvements to the baseball field, you know, the parking, which seems like a pretty large lift. Something like that, because, you know, currently, you know, we don't have parking, and the playground functions, you know, fine. There's a lot of cars on the street during baseball games, but it works without the parking. So I didn't know if there's just a way to kind of contain the essence of the playground without adding these other things in phase one. But, you know, that's just, I'm just throwing that out there as a.
I think we can package the phases, you know, any way we want to. I think it comes down to, you know, financing of the phase. If you're looking at those two sections and it's, you know, 2 million versus 1 million for the playground, you know, they may want that in another phase, and maybe we wait a year. Part of it depends on, you know, some fundraising by the community as well. We're going to be looking at a variety of different funding sources, you know, including city funds, but also, you know, the potential, are there any grants out there?
Yep, that's
So,
great.
sorry, I almost just reported someone for jumping on. I didn't need to do that, so please turn it off. I'm multitasking here. So yeah, it really depends on, you know, really, again, the position of the city, you know, how strong they feel they are financially any given year, and what the recommendation from the CFO would be in terms of, you know, the right timing to do some of these projects.
Yeah, and I guess Jim and Jeff, another reason we focused in on the playground for phase one, as Jim mentioned, it's past its safe life, let's call it that. It doesn't meet current code standards. It's definitely not universally accessible. You can't access the play equipment if you were in a wheelchair or needed help, you know, in a mobility device. So that was really the reason for focusing in on the playground specifically, was from an accessibility standpoint. But
I think that makes sense. Yeah, the playground. My point is that if terms of cost, if it were to come down to a playground in a basketball court or a playground in a parking lot, I would rather see playground in a basketball court, because like your survey said, 95% of the respondents are within 5 minutes walk. And currently there's like only 2 parking spots. So the playground has functioned for a long time without that parking. So I think, you know, anyways, that's my preference. I've said enough. I need to give other people.
No,
it makes sense. Absolutely. Your logic is sound.
That is a great point. The reason we did do the parking lot was to provide accessibility from a vehicle. Right now, you actually have to leave the park, go around the outside of the park to actually get into the park from the handicap parking spaces. So
yeah, it's kind of off to the side there.
So, but that doesn't mean maybe we don't do 11 spaces. We do 1 or 2, stripe them as accessible spaces, and then in the future we build the rest of the remaining 9.
All right, we have one other hand raised, Mark Dempsey. If you want to speak, and then I promise I will get over to the chat room.
Yeah, I just, are you working with the sustainability coordinator, Sean Lutz, regarding, I'm sure there's going to be a push to have electric charging stations in some of this parking. So I'd rather see it part of the initial plan than some of the other plans I've seen where it's an afterthought. It's coming in and slowing the project down.
So we haven't had those conversations yet, but I guess this was really at this point to get buy-in on the master plan, and you know, as we got into more detail, I would imagine Jim would set up those meetings, and we would definitely include him on these.
Your question was specifically EV charging stations there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I know Sean is looking to install those or get a grant for those all over the city, City Hall and some other areas. I'm not sure that this particular property has been identified yet, but I would imagine, you know, as the technology increases and as the city becomes more comfortable with installing these, items, you know, certainly this would be a candidate for one of those areas as well. So, yeah, I think it's something that we can certainly look into and include them in the process.
Excellent.
Thank you for that. And looking to the comments, I see several that say, you know, looks great, looks amazing, very excited. Audrey Hall had a question about the timeline for start to finish. Design looks great, but what is being done to upgrade access to the bridge over the brook to provide full access to the bike trail? So I think I can answer that, you know, in part anyway, that, you know, where you enter into conservation and that area, you know, that is dealing with a slightly different set of, you know, restrictions and concerns. We did have Rob MacArthur in here at one point. I don't know if he is still here. He was straddling two meetings, or if there's anyone else from conservation that wants to chime in. But yeah, that's something we would work with conservation on. It would probably be a separate access point when it comes to that bridge. Not necessarily part of this project, but certainly something that could be dovetailed in. Again, you know, providing the commission is supportive of that and you know, can come up with a plan. And again, we got to go back to the CFO for funding for those things. Did you have anything additional to add, Brendan, to that?
I was just reflecting back on the conversation we had with Rob the other day on a separate project, but I mentioned that we were meeting with you folks tonight, and that's why I actually invited him to join, because I know he is familiar with this property. He actually sat in on, I think it was meeting number 2, and he had mentioned that they're aware of, you know, the desire to have better access to the bridge, and it sounded like, and I don't want to speak for him, but it sounded like they were definitely looking at it and exploring their options from either funding or actually implementation. We were talking about some of the signage, make it more known, and whether or not the kiosk or if there's an additional sign down at the other end of where we connect to the trail. So I know it's on Conservation Commission's radar, and I guess that I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to speak for Rob, but they're aware of it.
So Audrey had actually one additional follow-up. She raised her hand. She also asked in the chat, but Audrey, did you want to ask me a question?
Yeah, I wanted to, thanks so much. I wanted to ask again, is all of this coming through the grants that you applied for through the CDBG? Is it all grant funded? And when would you actually begin? You might have answered that, and I'm sorry if I missed it. When would any of this actually begin?
So this is purely a design phase, and actually it's been a culmination to get to you know, the price point to pay for all of Weston Sampson's design work. We did a CDBG grant that got us you know, roughly a third of the funding for fiscal year 22. I am putting, I'm sorry, for 23, I did, no, for 22, and I did put in for a balance to get us through more of the design for fiscal year 23. So those are two CDBG grants that we're stacking to try to get most of the way there. For the balance, we have a mitigation amount of $30,000 that we're going to apply towards the project as well to finish paying for the design and to start to lead us into developing some funds for the actual construction. So the actual construction of the park, there, you know, we can certainly look at grants and things like that, but we would be looking for the city, most likely with a $3 million price tag, to pay a significant portion of that project. There might be some smaller grants out there that we can research once the funding, you know, is committed by the city to kind of move forward with it. The other piece of this is that I know there was a lot of people in the neighborhood that wanted to work on some fundraising, which I think would help as well. So, I mean, this is a project that's probably going to take a number of different funding sources to complete. I am happy to report that going forward, the CFO is looking at a model which is more of a ask for all the money to complete a project from start to finish. So design, construction administration, construction, and closing. You know, she'd be looking for a package that will carry that all the way through. That process is just starting through this budget season. So you'll see that happen on some projects moving forward. This project, it's just the timing of it. We were able to get the design done before we were actually able to get the money to construct it. The philosophy being that now that we've done this research, we have a design that the committee has vetted, that we're ready to move forward with that. And that should hopefully help convince people that we're ready to go with construction on this.
I have a follow-up if it's allowed.
Sure.
Okay. So with that amount of money, for some reason, I thought that there was a lot more grant money available. It's going to be competing with a lot of other capital projects in the community. So the horizon for this, just the seems pretty long. I'm wondering if you would agree with that. And then after that question, just my other technical question about the design is, I see with the parking that you added on Laclede, that looks like it's under the transmission lines. Would they be allowing that parking on Laclede? So the two questions were the funding in the horizon and then the parking on Laclede.
So just quickly with the funding, like I said, right now we've been working with the CFO on a 5-year capital plan. We submitted 37 items that, varying requests. I mean, they're all great projects. They're all for good causes. The city does not have all the money right now to do all those projects. I'll be totally honest with you. There's more requests out there for funding than there is available funding. That's going to make some people unhappy. So, what we'll do is we have a design, we have a plan, we have some momentum. It will help to generate more interest to try to get some of that funding. I will let you know, looking at our current project list, we have over half a dozen projects that are currently funded that we need to execute on over the next couple of years, including finishing up the dog park, Mary Dennison Park environmental cleanup, Chris Walsh master plan, the Reardon Park master plan, which we're working on. We're working on some stormwater initiatives over at Washacom. And then in the capital improvement plan request, we're looking at redoing Winch tennis courts, some playground improvements, Toro Groundsmaster, lighting upgrades for Loring Arena, crew cab dump truck for the cemeteries, and the Bruce Freeman Trail is being proposed to be funded. So, I mean, this is an awful lot of projects for essentially myself and Jim Duane, 2 project managers to manage all these. So we'll be looking at capacity, capacity for funding and capacity for staff time to be able to do all these projects effectively. So that's what we're balancing right now. And to what the other question was, the parking under the power lines. And I believe that was vetted with Eversource, and it wouldn't be on the plan if it wasn't acceptable to Eversource at this point. So I think those spots are feasible, correct, Brendan?
That's correct. Yeah, their big take was just don't eliminate their access to their easement on the north side, which we're not. As you can see, the access road is labeled. It's right now it's currently a vegetated steep embankment. This would be carving into that embankment and building a small retaining wall to hold up the slope, and then you would park in front of that retaining wall. So, but they've seen this. They haven't said to not do it, and they were aware of it. This is, I guess, perhaps since they have so many restrictions within the park area, that this was their perhaps way of saying, hey, we want to be a good neighbor and provide some additional parking. Unfortunately, it's not park space, but we'll take what we can get because parking is important during the Little League season.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions here. Regular maintenance, will there be a regular maintenance schedule? Yes, you know, it's one of our parks. We will get out there on a regular basis to maintain that. If we are spending millions, could a full tennis court ever work? I would add that, you know, anytime you add amenities and add value, it adds cost. So I think, you know, sure, we can do anything, but then it's going to come down to funding. So, you know, the millions account for what you see on the screen. The 3 million, if you add a full tennis court, then you're adding costs to the project that goes north from there. Yeah, there is some ability to apply to the MOD, the Massachusetts Office on Disability. This is an accessibility project, so that is one grant source that we would certainly look to assist with that. One more call. Saxonville Beach, kind of a different topic, but thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, they did a training exercise up there, the fire department, and it was early in the season, and they destroyed a small piece of that parking lot. We have a quote to get that fixed. It's just everyone's projects were underway when this happened, so we're now asking our local asphalt and pavement contractor to see if they can come out. We do have a quote for it. We're working on getting the funds and getting that fixed before the season opens.
I guess, Jim, if I
Yes.
could, related to the ability for tennis, I mean, we haven't actually overlaid a tennis court, but you know, another option could be where the basketball court is, you know, maybe that is a multi-sport court. You could technically have tennis stanchions on the side, and then however it's programmed, permitted, you know, good neighbors, someone would put up a tennis net when there is not a basketball game going on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a full independent tennis court if people are okay with that. When you are constrained by land and or budget, a lot of times we try to make use of a court and make it a multi-purpose court. So there is that potential.
Yeah, I will also let you know that, you know, being proposed or being recommended as one of the fiscal year 23 capital improvements is the Winch tennis courts right around the corner, which will provide 6 brand new tennis courts, not too far from your neighborhood. So I don't know if that helps, you know, alleviate some of the concerns. You know, pickleball is also a very popular sport, and they're looking to expand and grow as well. So, you know, just things to think about. So I've hit, you know, we've come to an hour discussion. I do want to be respectful of people's time. I think I answered everything within the chat, and I don't see any more hands up. So with that, does the commission have any other final thoughts or comments? And then we can move on to our regular meeting.
I personally think it was a great presentation. It's a pretty large project. Hopefully we can get this thing wrapped up and find some money to put it together. Thank you for taking the time to share with us. Appreciate it. Any other commissioners have any comments?
No, I don't see any. Okay, just there's a thank you in the chat. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Thank you, Brandon and Weston Sampson. I think you did a phenomenal job on the design. I think you captured what the neighborhood was looking for their neighborhood park. And I think this really nails it. Stay tuned. We are going through the budget process now, and will be every year. So please, if you're interested in following that process, the city council is meeting regularly. They will be voting in the next few weeks on their budgets, their final budgets, and we'll be working with what is provided to us for the next 12 months until we go at it again. So thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim, and everyone. Thanks for joining, taking time out of your evening. And we look forward to working with Jim and the city as we work through the rest of the design.
Great. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Great. So moving on to the commission meeting portion of the program. We have want to go on to the next.
So, Superintendent, report.
Where do you want me to stand?
We can be here. I also have control of the camera. I can zoom it around. You could jump over there.
I will stand in front of Dave.
There you go.
How are you? Hi, guys. Thanks for coming. I have a lot to say, and I'm going to try to breeze through it as quickly as possible. So I apologize. I do not want to make this any longer than we have to. So starting off with my report, numbers and programs. First off, can you all hear me? Yes, good, perfect, excellent. We had 152 registrations this past month. This does not include those names that have been added to wait lists. Registrations were very evenly spread out over all of our programs. Between now and the end of August, we have 56 programs running, not including any special events. Of the 56 programs, 22 of them are full with wait lists. Of the remaining 34, with registration still available, 20 have less than 5 spots open. So I think those are awesome numbers. Our spring break programs went off really well. I mentioned last month that we had hired a sign language interpreter. We had 3 participants in both of our spring break activities that utilized the service. Participants and their parents were really satisfied and thankful. Again, thank you to the Disability Commission for their monetary support in that. Men's softball season has started. 10 softball teams, about 250 players. Started on May 3rd, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Mary Dennison and at Ryan. So far things are going smoothly. And again, I put our link to the program brochure in case you guys haven't seen it yet. Moving on to challenges. Do I need to say we need lifeguards? There, I said it. We are running another hybrid lifeguard class on June 4th and 5th. Currently, we have 5 students registered, which is fantastic. As of this morning, I have a total of 13 lifeguard applicants. Not bad, we're moving up in the world. There's a caveat, there always is. 9 of those 13 are returning. Of those 9, 3 can only work on an on-call basis on weekends only. 1 is available until July 1st. 1 is only available to work 1 week of the summer. 1 can only work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 2 have availability Monday through Friday. And currently, all of the applicants have requested vacation time more than 7 days during the month of July. Do with that what you would like. I am going to do the best that I can do. I don't know the availability of the new applicants. I'll find that out at their interview. Those applicants need to be vetted in the pool so we can see what their skills are prior to me offering them employment. We do have 3 bathhouse applicants. 1 is returning to our new. Again, I'll find out all of their availability when I do their interviews as well. Those are set up to be done prior to the end of the month. So needless to say, working around schedules will be tricky this year. I'll do the best that I can, I promise you. I do anticipate having lifeguards also work as beach monitors and or bathhouse attendants when I have 3 of them working on a shift. So essentially, if it doesn't really matter what day of the week, if I have 2 lifeguards that are able to work at a facility, any one of the 3 beaches, they won't necessarily be working in a lifeguard capacity. They'll be working in a monitor capacity because they can't execute their position as a lifeguard with just 2 people on duty. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. Another challenge so far that we've run into is that we did have to cancel our summer swim team. Due to not having a head coach, we did a long and thorough search for a coach. Thank you, Kathy, for all of your help as well with that. It just didn't come to fruition, so I needed to cancel the program in order to let kids register for other teams. Positives and new initiatives. The exciting event we had last year, there were 165 participants who registered. The fire department, police department were able to join us. And I believe everybody had a fabulous time. We had a couple of our commissioners there. I think they had a fabulous time as well, which is exciting. Can't wait for next year. We did have a booth at the Earth Day Festival. We've shared important department programming information with all of the attendees. And as always, everybody enjoyed the Plinko game that we like to bring when we do these community events. Jim and I have been attending monthly beach meetings with the mayor, DPW, Conservation Commission, and us. So since March, we've been attending bi-monthly meetings with the mayor and the other departments to discuss the water quality issues at all of our bodies of water in the city. Obviously, the majority of the focus has been on Washaken Pond specifically. All of the departments are working in conjunction with one another to combat the number of issues surrounding that specific body of water. It's not specifically E. coli. There's more going on there than just goose-related issues. I think that it's important to note that all of the bodies of water are obviously living, breathing, and ever-changing organisms, and there's not going to be a quick fix for what's going on over there, and not one of our single departments can head this off at the pass and are able to fix this alone, which is why the mayor has brought us in, and we're all collectively working together. So our department has hired a lab to collect and test the water weekly. We will be putting up snow fencing, as well as mylar pinwheels and coyote decoys over the next few weeks. So the goal of this is to create a threat to the geese. These deterrents will need to be moved every week or so to make the areas unfamiliar to the geese. We've also hired a goose control company to visit all 3 beaches multiple times a week with border collies to scare off the geese as well. Again, if you guys get phone calls, yes, that's us, we did that. We'll see how it goes. Washaken Lake Association, they had a meeting on Sunday, May 1st, which I was honored to be part of. While I was there, Shannon, you were there as well. Liz, Susan, trying to think who else is on the call. You're all there. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. This is probably going to be a little bit of a repeat of what you've heard. So there were probably about 40 community members. I believe there's 37-ish, but when I thought to count. Again, conservation, DPW, Park, Public Health, Parks and Recreation, we were all there to present the challenges associated with this specific body of water and the projects that we are anticipating to do to try and combat those challenges. At the end of, well, during the presentation and at the end, I feel that a lot of questions and comments in regards to how beach operations will look this season, as well as the goose control efforts, which beach operations will look as good as I can make them look this season as far as staffing is concerned. And I just told you what we are doing to combat the geese. There was also a lot of talk about if and when the fence will be removed. I know Jim has this on his agenda later on in his report, so I'm not going to get into that too deeply. However, I do think it's important to, one of the things that I took away from this community meeting, which kind of surprised me, is that there were multiple people that approached me after the meeting during a free-for-all Q&A session that expressed that they did not want the fence to come down or be unlocked and unattended. They actually requested that we had further meetings and community input before any action is taken. So I think that is something really important to note, that it's not necessarily a unanimous community thought process, I guess. So be that what it is, like I said, I'll let Jim discuss things later on. Another positive is that the press release for the community corner was sent out by the mayor's office. So far, all of my feedback has been very positive in regards to that. The Greater Framingham Running Club met last week to discuss Wednesday night family track meets, how it's going to be held. They're very excited to get the ball running on that. They are also going to try to make the meets friendlier for those that are deaf and hard of hearing. We're gonna be utilizing more whiteboards, communication purposes, as well as adding visual cues, different color placards to be held up, start, finish, that sort of thing, that we're gonna be trying to do this year. I think that's fantastic. And let me see here, our Police Athletic League is scheduled to participate in a basketball tournament on June 4th and 5th in Marlborough. They anticipate bringing 8 to 10 kids to the tournament. Transportation will be provided by the police department. Moving on to my miscellaneous, it wasn't on there, but it's on there. It's just an FYI for those of you that are curious. I did have a conversation with the staff over at Keefe Tech in regards to the pool. They do anticipate closing the doors towards the end of July. And as of this afternoon's conversation, a decision has not been made yet to either renovate the facility or keep the doors closed permanently. If Keefe receives the funding to renovate the facility, it'll be offline for a minimum of 2 years, is what I was told. So that's just more of an FYI for those of you that were curious. Questions? Shannon?
Couple of questions for you. Hold on, I just wrote them down. Curious, and you don't have to have an answer now. This is more for just thinking about. I'm wondering if having people on the beach even part of the time would help with the goose problem. And I don't have any sense for how much larger or smaller or equal the problem on Washakum is to other beaches. And like I said, I don't need an answer now, and I probably don't even want an answer now because I want it to be something that some folks kind of go away and think about, collect some data or whatever we have on that. Then I have a couple of other questions. And this could be something that Jim gets to in his portion, and I'm not sure exactly where the line is, so feel free to pass the buck until we get there. But is it possible that we open the gates to Washakum Beach without a cost to the city, to parks, to the mayor's office, any municipal endeavor, or, well, anybody really? Is it possible to just open the gates without there being a cost? And let me ask the other questions I've got here because you can answer them in order, they might be related. So how short are we on bathhouse attendance? I know the lifeguard issue has kind of been, it's now becoming a perennial problem, but I'm curious about just bathhouse attendance. And then along with that question, what are the qualifications for bathhouse attendants? Like what are the qualifications to extend them an offer to have them start working? And this kind of goes down to what is the ideal versus what is the nice to have, and kind of where do we make those determinations? And then the last point that I have, and I know you knew this was coming, is I'm really curious about the conversations from folks who don't want the fence taken down at Washakum, and if that is the consensus, then that is the consensus. But since last year, I've had multiple neighborhood and lake association meetings, Facebook postings, emails, discussions with the mayor, and the consensus has generally been, and I've not heard anybody kind of step up and say, no, please don't, that'll, whatever, I want the fence there, I need that fence there. And if that's the case, then definitely we want to hear all the voices. But my concern is that we have given many different forums, many different outlets, opportunities for people to speak up, and nobody has. And it's not just me that is not getting that message. It's all the way to, Counselor Stefanini, to a couple of folks that you see on here from District 8. That message isn't kind of even percolating around the neighbors. So I would like to know how we can address those folks.
I understand that, Shannon. That's why I felt that it was important for me to bring to your attention that even I, as being on this end of everything, where we get all the phone calls and stuff like that, that you guys don't always necessarily hear about, I was just as surprised as you are probably right now that, you know, people have stepped up and spoke to me that afternoon to say, hey, listen, I don't think this is a really good idea and I would like to have more input in it. I don't know, I'm speculating right now, that I don't know if they were new to the area, if this was the first meeting they've attended. I have no idea, as this was the first
Okay.
meeting I attended.
Yeah,
But again, I
yeah,
felt
and
important enough to bring that up, so maybe more discussion.
absolutely. Absolutely, more discussion can be had. We have had many discussions, and that is absolutely not to say that the conversation is ended, final book closed. But it is the desire, especially of the neighborhood association, that took a vote on approaching the, was it the city? Somebody else on the call might be more in tune with that, but took a vote to request to have the gates officially open, and I believe that was to go to the mayor, but I could be wrong on that. That is the desire of the neighborhood association, that they took a vote on it, and it was unanimous vote. So it's gonna happen unless there are folks that can come forward and can say, hey, you know what, this is not a good idea, and make that case, so we can weigh the pros and cons of that. But I did have several other questions. I don't want to weigh down the whole meeting with that. Could we go back to the other questions and see what we want to do about that?
We'll take a stab at them, yeah. So bathhouse attendants,
So
you're still,
bathhouse attendants, I'm sure bathhouse attendants, especially because we're gonna be utilizing them kind of differently than we have in the past. Typically, on a normal year, I believe, we budget for what, 6 bathhouse attendants, something along those lines, that are typically spread out throughout the 3 beaches. The last couple of years, we have not staffed Washington at all with bathhouse attendants. But I was able to staff them with lifeguards, which were able to simulate that other position because of the lack of use that the facility was getting. So it's not like they were out straight as lifeguards, they couldn't do double duty. But they're not gonna be here this year, so therefore I need bathhouse attendants in order to open up the facility.
what do they need for?
So for qualifications, honestly, typically it's 16 years old. We would train them in CPR and first aid during our own training sessions. They need to be willing to scoop goose poop, get in the water a little bit with rakes, start raking out all of the stuff that's in the water as well as keeping the actual facility clean and updated. Toilet papers, paper towels, you know, all sorts of that stuff that goes along with maintaining an actual facility. They also need to be present enough, especially if I'm using them at Larners, for example, to be able to turn away those non-residents and stick to their guns and be okay with that. There's a lot of verbal abuse that I'm not going to sugarcoat anything that goes down at some of these beaches. They need to have the self-awareness to be able to handle that in a professional manner. Typically, a 16-year-old doesn't necessarily have those skills, but train them to the best of our ability and hope that things that they get them. I always enjoy kids that are at least college age for this sort of stuff, just because they're a little bit more experienced. But right now, I'm not going to necessarily be picky. I just need to get them in here and get them interviewed and see what they can and can't offer for the department.
The fence up or down and costs associated with that was, I think, the next question.
No, the question was the gates, opening the gates, not taking the fence down.
So, well, it does sort of run hand in hand. So I think there is an opportunity to potentially open up the gates. You know, but I think we are conscious of working with the neighbors and things too. We still need to work with the neighbors to make sure that they, you know, feel safe with the opened up access. So yeah, we think we can, you know, probably do that. But then again, we want to make sure that the, you know, the people that are directly impacted by that decision, you know, their voices are heard.
So I'm sorry. So I actually had a conversation with Steve Collins at that same Lake Association meeting on the 1st, and he's the one who proposed to me that we think about doing this in smaller chunks, like not taking down the entire fence. Let's just try to open up the gates and see, let's see what happens. Let's do it in smaller pieces so that we don't have to, you know, put money into it, that it's not gonna, the hinging point isn't, you know, the financing or getting a full design or anything like that. So what would it take to get that open? Because I mean, I have talked to, and I know the neighbor who is most concerned about safety is Steve Collins. And no other neighbors have come to any of the meetings or answered any emails or Facebook posts or any other way that we've gotten the word out about this. So if there are other neighbors, I'd love to hear from them. I truly would love to hear everybody's opinion on the topic, because I am not a next door neighbor to the beach, so my opinion doesn't really matter that much in that regard. So what do we need to do to get the gates open at the very least?
So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Yeah, so we can open up the gates. I also had a conversation with Mr. Collins. I wasn't going to bring his name out in it, but since it's been brought up, we'll talk about him. I had a conversation with him yesterday. He actually ran out as we were discussing you know, what the beach was going to look like for the summer. And he said he would be open to that idea if and only if we provided a fence along the water line that goes from all the way from his property over to the tree. You know, again, we're kind of getting into the area of kind of a working, you know, meeting and kind of working through all these issues. But, you know, it sounds like what you heard from him was true in part. But the second part to that is.
But Jim, that's exactly what I said to you when you and I met along with one of my volunteers for the dog park. It came up when she left. I said, the proposal was to, his proposal was to take the fence that's around the playground, even though I personally wouldn't recommend that for what I hope are obvious reasons, and move the fence over to his fence over to the across the grassy area that I just keep calling it grassy area, but I did bring that up. So you were aware of this before you talked to Steve the other day. So I want to get the wheels moving on that, and I want to know what I can do to make that happen.
Sure. So it is not a free thing. It costs money if you're going to move an existing fence or if you're going to install a fence. Your comments earlier today did not reference that fence, so I wanted to make sure that that point came out. So yeah, whatever we do over there, there's going to be some cost associated with it to make the neighbor happy and install that section of fence.
Okay, so if we have to get volunteers from the neighborhood, I'm sure we've got plenty of neighborhood volunteers to do that, but we can make this happen. So what do I need to do to get those wheels moving on that front?
I got a problem. First off, neighbors volunteering to take down city property. Is Jim?
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm happy to answer.
I heard volunteers taking down city property. Jim, is that?
Well, so we need to just start the conversation. We need to start action, not just talking
Jim,
about
you
this.
asked if neighbors could take the fence down. I'm asking Jim if we can legally touch fences that belong to the city.
Well, I think we can take a look at the fence. You know, when it comes to neighbors and volunteers,
We get an answer. Can neighbors touch that fence?
I would have to look into that. I don't know if
It's city property. Sorry, I don't mean, but it's city property. I don't think anybody can touch anything that belongs to the city without the city's permission.
Correct.
Well, it's not like they're taking it. They would be, yeah, we can discuss the details of it. My proposal isn't like this is what needs to happen. I just want to get the conversation and the actions moving, because we've been talking about this since shortly after I started with the commission last year.
We're talking about three issues here, not just one. I personally am concerned about safety issues and about putting stress on police and public works and a lot of other things, especially where we're having water quality issues. I'll put a proposal together. Does anybody want to So the commissioners want to vote on whether the gate should be open. Is there anybody interested in doing that?
I'm sorry, there was an echo. Can you say that again?
I asked if there was any commissioners that were interested in putting forth a vote by the commissioners to open the gates.
I mean, I would put forth a vote. I make a motion to
We have a
open up the
second.
gates.
Okay, that's fine.
So there's a motion on the floor for the gates
Yep,
to be open.
we have a motion, we don't have a second.
I do see. There's no second.
Did any of the commissioners have any other questions for me for my report?
I don't see any hands. We do have some hands up in the public. Sue Petroni and Mitchell. Why don't we start with Susan? You had your hand up for a while.
Yes, good evening. I'm speaking as part of the Coburnville Tripoli Neighborhood Association. I wanted to reinforce what Shannon said. The association took a vote to have the beaches open. We have sent a formal letter to the mayor. And our argument is that the other two beaches are open to the public, and the one beach on the south side in the environmental justice neighborhood is closed. And it's just completely unfair. And we've have had this vote multiple times, and this time we did send a letter to the mayor about it.
I haven't seen the letter. I don't think you got a copy. The commission's got a copy of the letter, so I'm not really sure what the letter is specifically referencing.
But do understand, Susan, we all work from there. Bottom line is, if he wants to open, he really like it now.
Well, the argument is that two of the beaches are open and one of the beaches is not. And if you look at the demographics, it is the beach in the area where there's BIPOC and low income that is closed.
Okay, but I say with Jim, I'm not seeing this letter, and it's been sent to the mayor. I'm not going to speak to him. Said we all answer to him.
And I think in my previous comments, it wasn't that I was reluctant to opening up the gates. I think it was more, the cost around and what does it look like for the fencing. I don't want to do a lot of work and then have to go in and do more work. I was hoping that the stormwater management project would have moved along a little bit quicker and would have included how that area of the park is framed, including some, small fencing. We talked about shrubs, fencing, something low lying, something to protect the sedge from a conservation standpoint. So I think that, there is an opportunity to do it, but I'm just, relaying that there are some costs that are associated with that. Susan had her hand up again. And then we can go, hand down. Mitchell, please.
Good evening. I just wanted to comment that Shannon's question earlier asked about the cost of opening the gates, and we seem to have gotten diverted into a cost of taking down the fence, of putting up a gate to protect the neighbors' concerns. And as far as I can tell, simply opening the gates, there'd be little to no cost about it. And although, and just for context, I live down the street from the beach. I live at 20 Nipmuc. So I'm very close to the beach. I don't have the exact same concerns as the butter about people perhaps going out and getting onto his property. And I think that those concerns may be valid. But the problem is we don't know. And if we open the gates as a test, we can see whether or not there's an actual issue. If there is an issue, then we can focus on how to address that issue, which may include an additional cost of building a fence or designing a fence. If we conclude that there is no issue with that, then we may move forward to the issue of whether there's a cost or whether there's some design work that needs to be done in order to take down the fence. But it seems to me that we're at the beginning of the summer season, when people really have a desire to be using the lake, and we can open up the gates tomorrow and see what happens. If nothing happens, then we can move forward. If there's a problem, we can try to address those problems. But I think it's a big mistake for everybody to get bogged down in the need for more studies and more input when we don't actually have the information where those studies or the input is actually going to contribute anything. So, and I should say that I came into this being very skeptical about opening the gates. I have other concerns, not about people moving onto my property, but I have other concerns. But the reality is, I learned why that gate was put up, and I didn't like it. And I don't know whether or not there was there is an issue going forward. So I would like to strongly urge the department to open the gates and let's see what happens. We can easily close them again.
Well, my concern again, that you don't have any staff at this point.
No,
When will it start?
I'm scheduled to start the second week in June. I'm funded for an 8-week beach season.
Okay.
Can I'm sorry. My mic is still on. So can I just interject for a second? The other gates, the other beaches are open regardless of whether or not there's staff. I don't think that there's anything about this beach that makes staff more required than the other beaches. People are responsible for themselves in terms of how they act around water, whether they act around water at Washacum or at any of the other beaches. We don't know if there's a problem. And I think that holding everything up because of the need for staffing or the need to run consultant studies or the need to allocate money for things that might need to be done in the future really is getting way ahead of the game here. Let's open the gate. Let's post a sign or just trust people to not be idiots. And let's see what happens. Let the community and the neighbors use this resource. We live on the lake. I mean, it doesn't affect us one way or the other in terms of whether or not we're able to access it. But we look around us and we see that nobody else can. And that's really a shame. It's a shame both in terms of giving people the ability to access this resource and also of generating community support for the resource. So, we're talking about the need to combat E. coli and the geese. That's something that nobody who can access the lake actually cares about, because why should they? It doesn't affect them. Meanwhile, if you let people onto the beach, maybe you can cut back on the cost of the goose dogs, because there'll be people around. So I really, again, I hate to repeat myself, but I urge the commission to open the gate and let's just take it day by day, week by week, and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think we covered this once before. What's the town's liability if we thought something was unsafe and we all of a sudden open it?
The town's liability at Washacum is no different from the town's liability.
Excuse me, I asked Jim, please. I understand the other beaches don't have, but
What?
being in business, you put things in place that are considered safety factors, and years down the road, you might decide that they're no longer necessary. But if you take those safety factors off, you're leaving yourself open to some type of liability.
Okay.
That was my only question.
Look, I am a lawyer, so I completely understand caution and being afraid of liability. Okay, that's my business. But the reality is that there is no difference between Washacum and any other lake. And my understanding, and it may or may not be true, I learned this the other day, about why that fence was being put up and about people being concerned about certain people being able to access the beach, really shook me and bothered me, and changed my view of my own concerns about opening the beach. We've got a resource here. Let's let the community use it and let's see what happens. The liability increase here is no different from any other lake in the city.
I don't know what you're talking about as far as why the gate was put up, or whether, I'm sorry, I don't. But, you know, we do have history, we had 2 deaths in other lakes, or other ponds that did not have fences. So pardon me for trying to be on the safe side, but, you know.
No, I agree with you. The problem is that you're not talking about putting up fences around all the other lakes. You know, so why would you have a problem with opening the gates here and seeing what happens? If somebody wants to go into a lake foolishly, they're gonna do it. Okay, they can walk through my yard and get to the lake. People have walked through my yard to get to the lake. So all the gate is doing is keeping this resource away from the community and the neighbors who live here, who can see it, but who can't approach it.
Well, I put forth the motion, it wasn't taken. I mean, I don't know what else I can tell you. You know, I think there's some reservations amongst people on the commission. You know, I put the vote forward, it didn't get it.
The motion was seconded by Shannon, so I'm confused.
No, she proposed the motion. I can't make the motion. She did.
Okay.
I thought I seconded it as well.
No, I can't. I'm technically running the meeting, so someone else has to make a proposal and it needs to be seconded. Then it.
So I will go ahead and say, and I don't have the whole story, but as I learned from John Stefanini, the reason the gate was put up in the first place is because some neighbors didn't like some characters partying near the beach or using the beach or being too loud near the beach. These were also people who were not traditional white English speaking people. It was put up because they didn't like a certain type of character. It wasn't put up for safety reasons. And that gate is not there for safety reasons. And I know that the full story could be better told to you by John Stefanini, but the fact is that the majority of folks who have bothered to provide input on this really want the ability to use the beach. And this includes my conversations with the mayor, and it includes the neighborhood association, and even Steve Collins, who is the biggest advocate for safety because his family and his pets are put at risk if somebody comes around their fence. He is all for opening up everything if we can do it in a way that keeps his family and his pets safe. So that being said, I also wanted to add to the conversation that there was something like $400,000, and somebody keep me honest if the number is different, it wasn't allocated, but it was passed by the governor to go towards South Framingham projects and only South Framingham projects. The money has not been allocated, but this is something that we could very easily go to the mayor and say, look, we haven't been allocated this $400,000, but we need some of that money in order to safely fully open access to this beach. Even if it seems like none of the other commissioners feel that the South Side deserves to use the beach on the South Side, that we should open up those gates now until we have met every single qualification, then we could leverage that money. There are options available. So I want to lay that out there as well. There are options for this, but we need to look at this as a resource that is available to a very underserved community.
Shannon, you know how long the gate's been there? I have no idea.
I'm sorry?
You know how long the gate has been there?
So Susan, you've been here way longer than me. How long has it been here?
The gate has been here since I moved here in 2000.
Okay.
And yet, and I just want to add one other thing. A couple of weeks ago, when it was 90 degrees, Leonard Pond was packed with families. And Saxonville Beach had several families. Not one family could access Lake Washaycom in our neighborhood. And I'm sure this weekend there'll be, when it's 90 degrees again, there'll be families at Leonard Pond. And once again, this neighborhood will not be able to access the beach. It's just about fair treatment on the south side.
Susan, you sent a letter to the mayor. You ever heard from him?
Yes, and he came and spoke at the Coburnville Tripoli Neighborhood Association meeting at Barberry in February and completely supported us to have fair access to the beach, just like the families on the north side.
As I stated, we work for the mayor if he wants to open the gate.
You could take
I'm
the vote
wrong?
yourself tonight and show that you support Southside families to have equal access to the beach.
Well, so I guess just for me, what is a little confusing to me right now is I'm hearing open the gate, open the gate, open the gate, but then the other side of it is open the gate if Steve can have his fence that protects, you know, his little piece of the pie that he has over there. So, I mean, are we opening the gates just because everybody wants the gates open, or does that have to come with it? Does Steve, you know, have to have his little section blocked off in order for the gate to be open? Is that what he's supporting?
Steve
You
isn't
know, my
protecting-
conversation
Oh,
with
sorry.
him yesterday was, he was supportive of opening up the access, pedestrian gates, we'll call them, so that vehicles can't get in there. He was open to that if we could provide a fence that went from his property line over to the tree, essentially along that green grass area. He was open to, he was supportive of the idea.
With the fence.
With the fence, yeah, that was his take on it, yeah.
So opening the gate at no cost doesn't exist.
So-
Hang on. Opening the gate with no cost doesn't exist if we decide that in order to open the gate, we have to build a fence for Steve. But I haven't spoken to Steve about this specific issue. But you know, like I said, his concerns are valid concerns, but we don't know whether or not they are real concerns, if you can see the distinction, because we haven't tested it. So let's open the gates temporarily. Just do it on weekends if you want. Let's open the gates at no cost and monitor it and see whether or not maybe Steve is going to say, you know what, my concerns, although valid, are not being borne out in reality. Or maybe Steve's going to say, you know what, we opened the gates and I started having a problem immediately. So I think we need to build the fence. We just don't know until we
Mitchell,
test.
if I could interject a second here, the topic came up from Steve because he has already had incidents in his property, in his yard of people, dogs that got onto the beach, whether the gates were open or closed or somebody forgot to lock a gate. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but his family and his own dogs were in the backyard. Dogs came around the corner and then there was a fight that ensued with the dogs. So with or without the gates being open, there has already been incidences with his property right there.
Okay, so that's with or
Well,
without.
that's what I remember from the meetings that Stephen has been a part of, and that was his biggest concern, which is why I brought up that specific question. It sounds to me, you know, as sitting here listening to this, it has to be one with the other, not just one. And I would feel more comfortable if Steve said, hey, you know what, go ahead, open the gate, let's see what happens. And you know, we'll try it for, you know, however length of period of time. And then we'll move on from there. Whatever, you know, happens after that.
Well, I am very, I like Steve, you know, he's a neighbor and, you know, he's been great in terms of, the way, the Shaken Pond Association. But he's not the only one on the lake. And he's not the only one in the community. And so I think, and I would hope that he'd be open to at least testing it without having to design and put in a new fence at great costs or whatever the cost is, simply to see whether or not this is an issue. And if you said that he's had, you know, a problem with dogs coming in with or without the gate open, then the issue isn't that the gate was open. It's that dogs are running loose. Again, I mean, I appreciate him and I think he's doing a great job with the lake. And I think, you know, the concerns are real, but we can do this on a weekend by weekend basis, sufficient to just see what happens. Maybe all he needs is a sign saying no trespassing over there, or maybe he does need a fence over there. But, you know, the reality is if a dog wants to get in there, a dog is going to get in there. They can go through the front yard. You know, I really, I understand his concerns. I agree with that they are valid concerns, but let's just take it. You know, we don't even have to make a blanket decision. We're going to open the gates or we're going to take down the fence. Let's take it for the weekend. Let's take it for Memorial Day weekend. Give people a chance to use the beach and see what happens. You know, they can close it at night to prevent people, excuse me, prevent people from accessing if that's a problem. But let's give it a test. Let's open it for the weekend. Maybe we can open it again for the July 4th weekend. Even if we're not just making a blanket decision, open the gates, take down the gates, we can do a little bit at a time to increase the community access to this resource.
I don't see any more hands up. Does the commission want to take a vote on this? I mean, really to either advance this or not?
Yeah, my motion's still on the table. We just need a second if anybody is willing to do that.
And again, for me, before I do anything, again, it's what I'm hearing versus what is asking to be done. And for me, of course, I would love to say, because it's going to be another hot weekend this week. You know, it's going to be another hot weekend. So, of course, I would love to say, you know, go ahead, open the gate, see what happens. But again, my concern is Steve going to be okay with this, considering he is the one that had the issues. He is the one that is requesting to have the fence put up. And now we're going to open the gates with no fence put up. And the other part of that is, you know, the letter that was sent to the mayor, I would, you know, not that I'm saying anybody, there was no letter sent, but just to see what the letter, just to see what the mayor's thoughts were on the letter. I know some of you guys have heard his thoughts and heard what he had to say, but I don't think anybody else on this commission has with this specific topic.
So I would like.
That's my 2 cents.
No, thank you. I would like to say that the mayor has come to several of our neighborhood meetings, and I know that not everybody in this audience was there. And I know everybody on the professional staff is aware that opening the beaches, especially for swimming, is a priority. As Elaine reported, you know, there's a group of folks working together to do what they can to make sure that the water quality is where it can possibly be. But I want to go back to one of the prior speakers who mentioned all of the beaches are accessible except for the one on the south side, and the folks on the south side are primarily economically disadvantaged, are primarily non-English speaking people of color, and they are less likely to be able to get to one of the beaches that are accessible right now. So with that being said, I would like to make 2 motions. One, can we agree that we need a test run of this, because right now this entire conversation is purely speculation on all sides. So I think we need at the very least a test run, and we can give Steve a heads up that this is happening if he wants to take his kids and his family somewhere to be out of the way so he doesn't incur any possible risk. We can give him a heads up on that, or hey, maybe he wants to stick around and say, hey, what's going to happen? And then he can report back to us, whatever that is. But we need to do a test run to see what's going to happen, because expecting this to all be solved like in whole with a full beach redesign is just not going to happen anytime soon. The days are not getting any cooler. They're only going to get hotter. And this is a public resource that we're denying access to for a huge amount of, or a huge percentage of the community, all of whom live south of Route 9 and many of whom live south of 135. So I would like to make a motion that we do a test run, and ideally, you know, something on like on a weekend that we know is going to be hot, which is, you know, nearly impossible to predict, but like this weekend specifically we know, but that's like no notice. But on a holiday weekend would be great. We know there's going to be population density. People are going to want to get out, especially if they know the beaches are open. So we've got coming up, we have Memorial Day, we have July 4th, Labor Day is too late in the season. It's going to maybe even be chilly by then. So I want to put it out there to make a motion that we should run a test run. And I want to see who would be in favor of doing that. And we can do whatever is needed to make that happen. But I want to put that out there.
Do we have a second?
Not even going to do a test run.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, take a vote. Bob?
We can't hear you.
Your speaker's not working there.
Bob? Muted.
How about now?
Yep, you're better.
So the motion's been put forward, then we do a test run, and it was seconded. Your vote is?
It's frozen.
Are we still waiting on Bob?
This technology.
I think he's frozen.
How about,
Oh, yeah.
Bob, can you hear us?
No.
So he's gone. Yes.
I mean, we can always come around to him.
Or,
I didn't want it, but we didn't have to be.
Kathy, are you available?
She's going to have a forum.
Well, yeah, I mean, Bob dropped, oh, here he is.
There he is.
back to my phone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, that was strange. Don't tell anyone I'm the IT guy. So sorry about that. What I was going to say is, what does, I mean, can we get some sort of idea of what dry run entails? Like how are we defining this? Like, what's the plan? Before we take a vote, I would certainly like to have an idea of what the whole thing entails.
That's fair. In my motion to do a test run, I would say we want to unlock and open the gates. Obviously, if we do this anytime soon, we don't have time, nor do we have the resources to put up a fence, such as has been described, over the
I
past
want to go on record,
15
there'll
minutes.
be no offense to Steve.
Hang on, I wasn't quite finished. We open the gate and then we don't have time to do anything else. So a dry run would entail opening the gate, but doing so with enough notice to anybody who has concerns about being present for that dry run, that they could either take those concerns to folks who, like the mayor, or they could bring them back to us, the professional staff, and to the commissioners, and we can reassess depending on the nature of those concerns. We want to monitor that, and we need some folks to monitor how that's going. Do we have folks that are just running willy-nilly around the beach and checking out everybody's yards around the neighborhood, that kind of thing? Or are people mostly behaving themselves? Because if we expect a higher standard of human behavior than we expect and see at the other beaches on a regular basis, that's also not a fair standard of measure.
Okay,
But
I'm not
also we
sure.
wanna-
I'm not sure. Sorry, Shannon, but I'm not sure. This is a really kind of a strange kind of path to take this down, because I have
You're
no
starting
idea
to
why
lose
those,
me on this too.
I have no idea why that fence exists. I doubt it's because of a willy-nilly behavior by anybody, but I think probably Councilor Stefanini would know better than anybody, because he was a town selectman and our state rep at the time. Sounds like when this went up. So I don't think I mean, if I could. I'm very concerned about making a decision based on something that I haven't had those conversations with the neighbors. I don't know why that fence was put up in the first place, but it's not just like saying if we don't take down a fence, we're treating a whole section of the city differently. There's no fence in those other sections to take down. I mean, unless there's one that I'm not aware of. So I'm really happy to get these beaches open. I want them all open. I want them open all the time. And I want us to be able to have a city full of people using all of those services that we can give. I think most of the folks here know that one of the reasons I became a Park and Rec commissioners a few years ago was because I wanted to ensure that our kids could use all of our facilities. And I think the Park and Rec Commission, our Park and Rec Department, has done a really good job of opening up some things that historically have been closed. So I'm very much in favor of doing that. I don't feel like I have any pulse of the neighborhood to tell me that I should go against kind of what I'm hearing from the department. So what I'm wondering for Jim, is it possible this would not be a short-term thing that would happen before this weekend? But one thing I think would really help me is, could we have kind of like a meeting at that beach where we make sure that neighbors are invited from your organization and not from your organization? Just make sure that we blanket that we're going to have kind of this open discussion with the neighborhood, so that we can really just firsthand see
Hey,
what's
Bob,
there.
I'm gonna stop you there because I have
Oh.
been doing that since last
Okay, that's
September.
great, but you don't really have the right to stop me. That's something that's this is an open meeting, and I have the right to have my discussion. So Jim, I wonder if that was something if that's something that we could possibly do, because I do agree with the concept here of getting a fence removed. And I have the and I am very much in favor of getting the beach and getting all the beaches open as much as we possibly can, and all of our services. But is this something that's possible that we could do, where we could have a meeting for commissioners that maybe we can make sure the mayor is there, or do something where we can have all the city councilors there that we need, and just really get to the bottom of all of these issues without it being some neighbors are coming at this way, some neighbors are coming another way, but have it all be in one discussion?
Yeah, certainly we can arrange a meeting anytime, anywhere. That's no problem at all. I will, sort of add, and I think it's sort of where Shannon was going a little bit, that we have had multiple beach meetings here with the commission on different beaches at different times about some of these things. And I know Shannon has been reaching out, trying to hear the community and hear what their needs are as well. But we can, I don't know if we've had a meeting where we've actually had commissioners, city councilors, neighbors, all in one spot. It's been hard to kind of pull that necessarily together, but I'm happy to, set a time and a place that works for, or a time and a date that everyone agrees to, and we can see what the availability of the mayor is and go from there. So Bob, I am able to do that. If that's the will of the commission, I can certainly set that up.
It would certainly make, for me, kind of looking at this and trying to make a decision with a lot of seemingly disjointed information, that would certainly make that a much better situation for me. I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, I would prefer that.
So I feel it would not do the neighborhood or the Lake Association or Councilor Stefanini or the mayor's time a service if I didn't say that I brought up last summer that we needed to address the issues of the various beaches in the city. And because I happen to live in District 8, I took a stab at was shaken first, and there wasn't interest at that time to really dig into that and have any working groups, but there was a lot of folks, and I believe that was the time when Steve first came, or at least when I was here for first time, Steve came to a commission meeting and kind of brought up the issues that they were having there. So I did that and I ran with it. I worked with Jim and Elaine and the mayor and Councilor Stefanini and Andrea Adrian at the Neighborhood Association, and I've had meetings with Steve Collins as well. I've done all of that work because there wasn't a ton of willingness at that time, understandably so, to dig into those details. So I want to make sure that we're not just going back to the well and rehashing everything that I've already met with everybody on pretty exhaustively. I've had quite a few meetings with all of those groups.
I'm with Bob. I don't have a problem. If we have a quick meeting, we can get something together relatively quickly. Let's do it.
Why not?
So I see Marianne has her hand up.
I'm just going to, thank you very much. I'm just going to reiterate just the same thing that, other people brought up. We have a beach that is a public resource that has not been available to the public at all that it's supposed to serve. And I find this completely absurd. Last year, I think the beach was open maybe 2 days. And as we said, like in the past, past few weeks, we've had some hot weather. I see families walking by with their kids with their little pails in the hand. They get to the gate, they're turned away disappointed. These are my neighbors, and I would like to see this resource available to our neighbors. Steve, obviously, we do have to take into consideration, since he's a butter, he's not the only one. But again, this is a public resource that we're refusing access to the public it's supposed to serve.
Well, just so we're clear, that the water problem still exists. It was bad last year, correct?
Well, and yeah, the gates weren't necessarily closed because of the beach. They were closed because of the water quality. The recommendation would be not to go in the water anyway. There'd be signs posted. But yeah, that was last year and the reason why it was closed so much.
And we're refusing at the same time access to the green space. We're refusing access to the park altogether. There's not just the beach. There is also the abutting land where you can have a picnic without going into the water, obviously. So it doesn't seem correct. It doesn't seem fair.
Well, no, because also.
No, we do have a motion that is on the table and been seconded. It's really up to the commission to move on that motion one way or the other. As the chair, you're welcome to entertain more comments. There is a hand up right now with Mitchell, but Mitchell, do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, I'm not on the commission, obviously. But
right.
If I were, if I were on the commission, the motion that I would make is that the gates be open for Memorial Day weekend only as a test, so that we can gather information that we can then use as part of the discussion going forward, whether it's at a beach meeting or anything else. The motion would be simply open the gates for the weekend, for Memorial Day weekend, with notice to the abutters, and let's get that, use that as an information gathering situation.
Yes, I can. And you still have a motion on the table. You either need to move on or move past.
Okay, Bob?
Unless that motion is modified
Would you like,
with the new information.
Shannon, would you like to modify the motion?
Yes, I was just trying to clarify what Bob was asking for, but yes, I would like to make the motion that we open on Memorial Day. Only. Memorial, yeah, thank you. Memorial weekend, so like that, was that Saturday, Sunday, Monday? Just to gather data. I'm not gonna add more to it because that added discussion last time.
Well, I suggest that we say that we open Memorial Day, it's basically that we can have a meeting with the commissioners, mayor, anybody else that wants input before Memorial Day. Is that acceptable?
So the meeting would need to
sure.
be next week. It would depend on the mayor's availability. I can email him and find out what his availability is next week. Probably an evening meeting, so most can attend. And you really only have between, today and next Thursday. Bless you.
Okay, we can do it.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize the microphone was on. I would just say that again, if I were on the commission, my motion would be that we open for Memorial Day weekend and we try to schedule a meeting with the neighborhood and the mayor if we can do so beforehand, but not make the opening of Memorial Day contingent on that, because the idea of opening a Memorial Day would be to gather information to be discussed.
Well, I think he just lost the vote because of that. So what I like here is Bob wants to have.
That's why I'm not on the commission.
And I'm trying to accomplish both. To do both. To get a test run going, and also to get, Bob's questions, my questions, Tony's questions answered before we actually do this. That makes sense? So with that said, Shannon, what is your proposal, your motion again?
My motion is
Sorry, I
to
don't want
open
to
the,
keep repeating, but yeah.
my motion is to open the beach for Memorial Day weekend. That is Saturday, let me look at the dates. That is Saturday the 28th, Sunday the 29th, and Monday the 30th.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it if it's with the contingency that we have the meeting.
Shannon?
That was not the motion.
Then I'm good.
Okay, so that's been added, is that correct? I'm not here. So tell me yes or no. If we add a meeting, Shannon,
Well, there's an amendment to the motion, so
Yeah.
then you have to vote on the amendment to the motion, then you have to go back and vote on the main motion.
all right, so let's,
Right, so if someone's making an amendment to the motion, then you need to vote on
got you.
that.
Okay, do we have a second on Tony's amendment?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Berman, yes.
Hideko, yes.
Nice.
We haven't heard from
Oh.
Kathy, I don't know if she's
Oh,
around.
sorry, I forgot about Kathy.
She did check in a minute ago.
Okay. I do not vote for this with that contingency.
Oh, geez, that's a mistake.
Olson, yes.
Okay, so it's 3-1. Kathy, get hold of her.
Shannon should be not voting for this, just get it in.
Whoever that is in the background, we can hear you.
This is a public meeting that's being recorded.
Hello.
Oh, okay, there, yeah.
Kathy, you follow this?
Yeah, I had to step away for a bit and I just came back. So you're looking for a vote on the fact that we want a meeting before we open the gate.
Yeah, there's an amendment put to Shannon's, that basically we have a meeting before we,
Yeah, yep.
The original motion was to open the gates for Memorial Day weekend with notice to the abutters. The amended motion adds on that we would like to have a meeting on site before Memorial Day, before their decision is made. So that is the amended motion right now.
And yes, I agree. And I agree with Bob that totally support opening all the beaches equally, but I agree to need to have information. Not that there hasn't been other information, but it'd be nice to have very specific information from John or the mayor or the different people that have been in discussed rather than getting it secondhand, I think would be most helpful. So I agree with Bob and I am happy to support the beaches opening with the amendment for the meeting.
okay, so the motion's carried. So Jim, you get back to us.
I'm writing an email right now to the mayor to see if he can, what his availability is for.
Next week, whatever is available. I mean, people, Bob, Tony, you guys want to be there, we'll make a match.
I'm recommending maybe in the evening, unless someone else has another question, 6 o'clock, 6 sound reasonable, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, fine. This Saturday's you around?
I know unfortunately, on such short notice, not around this weekend, but, I can still try and set up the meeting. We'll see what his availability is.
I have to make it.
So the time is not as much.
I think this is a great time, and it is important. What time the meeting is important, is the having the meeting. Correct? Why are they looking at me like a guy?
I'm sorry, Dave, were you asking a question? I'm sorry.
The question is the time of the meeting is less important as the actual meeting. So if it can't be an evening, if whatever time he's available, you guys can work it out, right?
Yep, for sure.
We'll work it out. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is that all the commissioners?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will just, whenever he's available within the next week to discuss opening up the gates of Washington Beach.
Ideally, in the evenings, if not, whatever he has, we'll figure it out.
And Dave, I'll just say now, as I'm thinking about my schedule next week, I'll be in Pennsylvania Sunday through Wednesday, but you know my concerns. So
yes.
Sorry, I apologize. I went through all this and I just said, oh, I'm in Pennsylvania next week. So I apologize, but you do know my concerns and
yeah, I'm sure we all have the parts of these things that we won't be able to make, but let's see if there's a couple of open dates. Maybe
thank you.
Maybe take a vote on.
Yes. So
There's a hand up.
Oh, all right.
Susan?
Just a reminder that if all of the commissioners are meeting with the mayor, it needs to adhere to open meeting law. And it has to be 48 hours notice. And we would appreciate that both associations be notified as well, Lake Washakum and Coburnville Tripoli.
Sure.
Shane, can we count on you for letting those two groups know once we get a date?
I mean, I can let them know, but I want to make sure everybody takes that as what the neighborhood has to say about it.
Yeah, we can certainly, I see the Liz, yeah, we can put it on our Facebook. I just want to make sure that we actively reach out to those two groups. I don't necessarily have all of their emails. I don't know if they have a central email. I mean, I'm happy to share once we get a date. I just thought you might have access to those two groups to get the message out.
I mean, you do. I've been meeting with them for a year, so I have that access, but I want to make sure that that information is considered firsthand to them.
Okay. If you can share the contacts, I'm happy to send that. However we can get them the message. Yeah.
I'll have Joan Stephanie reach out to you.
Okay.
Give them the hand up.
Liz? You're still muted. You're muted.
There we go. So I'm Liz Caprillion, 275 Singletary Lane. So I'm not on the lake, but I am close enough that it is near and dear to my heart. So looking where you're going with this, I would say that what I would like to know then is, I'd like to hear what the hard number is for paying for the mystery fence, if that's what you guys are going to insist in the end has to be done for Steve before, you maybe get down to doing anything concrete. So if at some point that fence is the thing, what is that cost and what is that timing? I mean, like how long would that take to do and how much money? So everything here has been incredibly vague, and you want to have this meeting with a lot of people, and I don't understand what you're going to get from that, and I don't understand what you are going to require from them in order to make decisions. So I'm looking for one concrete thing, which is, if you got to have that fence for him at some point along the way, what is that number then? And
well, can I comment? Can I just comment real quick? I don't think it's a requirement that we're not doing this unless Steve gets his fence. And again, and I brought it up because my concern was, I'll say it again, my concern is with the meetings that Steve has attended, that I have actually listened to him, he has a very strong concern about having a fence that blocks, other dogs, people, what have you, wandering over into his yard. So
you're talking about putting it into the water.
Yes, correct. So it's not this is not going to hinge on the fact of, if Steve doesn't get his fence, we're not going to do this, in my opinion. Okay. What I'm trying to say is I wanted to hear from Steve and say, yeah, you know what? Let's do a test run. I'm not worried about the fence. Let's see what happens and we'll go from there. That's my concern. And I'll let Jim handle the rest about money.
Okay, so that's the one concrete piece that I would like to know. If it ends up that that's what Steve wants and that the commission again will not move forward unless they take care of that requirement, then we're back to everybody going, I don't know how much that costs and budget and how long it would take and who would do it. And so having that information for the next go around of this would be helpful.
He's one person. I mean, we're talking about a beach for hundreds of people. I mean,
that doesn't seem to be.
Fence, and, you know, we don't put it up, well, you know, he's in a butter and he's a person. I don't see where the fence has anything to do with the gate.
Then if
used to
it
be-
doesn't, then I don't understand why you haven't gone ahead and voted to just open the gate. Because we spent a long time listening to how we can't open that gate in case he needs that fence. So, and so I take that to the logical conclusion, which is then what is the fence gonna cost? So that when you finally get to that point and you want to defer again, because nobody's not gonna know the number, I wanna know what that number is.
Well, he wants the gate open, but he wants the fence to protect himself. Those are two different issues as far as I'm concerned, or anybody else. And what it would cost, who knows?
Well, somebody's gonna need to know.
Well, we would put it up.
I can get it depends on, you know, there's factors, what kind of fence it is and things like that, but I plan on talking with Steve tomorrow.
We're not putting anything in the water, that's against state law. What's the low water mark is public property.
Can you see Jim Dwayne's got his hand up? I think he can answer the question.
There you
go.
So I can't necessarily answer the question with a specific number, but I can say based on the conversation that Jim and I had with Steve while we were at the beach yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that we did reach out to a fencing contractor that the city has used on a number of occasions. And we talked about very specifically what Steve had requested. Now, whether or not what happens, if anything happens, ends up being specifically what Steve requested or not. What he requested, we did look into immediately. And it came back to us that you should anticipate that's probably going to be in the vicinity of $10,000 to $12,000, right? And again, that's specifically what he requested. So whether anything gets done or it's specifically what he requested, I think remains to be determined. But we did look into it immediately. Another concern that we would have based on what his request was is how does conservation get involved and what do they require in order to do that type of work in that vicinity to the edge of the pond? And even if you're just talking about concrete footings for fencing, there is a requirement for conservation to review plans and specifications in some fashion and provide some form of an approval, whether that's a quick meeting on site with the conservation agent, or if it requires some type of an appearance before conservation. You know, again, they determine that and then we follow the process they lay out. But I do think it's very important to note, and I want to, a little bit, I feel like I need to come to Jim's defense, because the tenor of this meeting really has shifted towards the unwillingness of the Park and Recreation Department to do something to provide improved access to the pond and the beach and the amenities. And I can tell you, based on all of the conversations that I've been having with Jim and the site visits that we've had down there and the internal discussions that we've had, it's not an unwillingness for us to provide access to that facility. It's more about kind of getting to what the group is talking about tonight, which is making sure that we satisfy whatever those requirements are that allow us to all put our heads on the pillow at night and feel confident that we've met the greater public good. And we've also protected those abutters that are as close by as some that live literally on the property line. And how do we do that effectively? So I just want to add that, because I feel it's a little unfair to slant this towards our unwillingness to do something, when I can assure you that there have been multiple internal conversations about how we can get to doing something down there. So I just think it's fair to note that. And I hope the fact that we did reach out to a fencing contractor literally within hours of having a conversation with Steve, that does show that we are trying to figure out what the right answer is and where that balance is. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That was not an answer to the question. That's good. But I personally don't think the two are connected. I mean, if we open a gate, we put up a fence, two separate issues as far as I'm concerned, unless somebody thinks different. Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay, with that said, can I have a motion to accept Superintendent's report.
So moved.
Second. We vote, Bob?
Yes.
Hideko, yes.
Oh, I keep forgetting Kathy. I was not hearing your chance. Stevens, yes.
Olson, yes.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay.
What's the amended motion to have the gates open?
We have to vote on the original motion.
Well, there was an amended motion that
The
you.
amended motion passed. We voted on it.
Right, okay, passed. Then that goes back, then. No, because the amended.
It was amended, so I assume that was.
Oh, I think that it's the adoption of the amended motion.
Ready. Next on the list is Superintendent of Parks.
Hi, I'll make it quick, but I'm gonna have my 2 cents in about the fencing down there. I'm gonna throw I've been here 31 years, and that fence has been there since I started. I did actually replace that fence, one of the first stages. So I also had a conversation offline with a former park commissioner who's been around longer than most of us, and that fence has been up since the 70s. And I have a hard time believing it was put up to keep people out. It was put up to keep people safe. So someone bringing out a story, to that, I find it hard to believe. I really do.
And I believe that, and you go back in the 70s, we had General Motors, we had Edison.
So that's saying that.
So I feel like
Let me
it's
fin-
unfair
I'm-
to speculate. Can we leave that go because?
Oh, excuse me, Shannon, wait your turn, please,
Wasn't I speaking? All right, so I'll make it quick. If you have any questions after we get to the bottom, we're on 3 days pickup of trash, still fixing a lot of the equipment. All the little league, big diamonds and softball fields are being groomed. We're field painting now. Now we have a robot, so we're out programming the robot to make it work more efficient and make our lives a lot easier. Still haven't doing the spring cleanups, trying to get mulch into areas. For the projects, the spring sports, we had tree work, we're pruning at Cushing, the center common, we'll go to the downtown common next. Arbor Day was at Maycomber Conservation Land. We planted 3 sugar maples with the help of the DPW and also with Conservation's approval. We did a bunch of work on some of the initial parts of the trail, and it was very successful. Good out, Keith Tech was involved also. A lot of free work done by local people also. Right now, we're doing playgrounds inspections are ongoing. Also aeration, aeration, fertilization, and hopefully slice seeding too. The dog park, we were responsible for in the sense of putting the water and the electricity into the dog park. And they're still making some improvements over there. Planting's gonna happen. Then we'll be regrading a couple of the areas that we need to put grass seed in and to make it look better. We'll do that. Right now, we're doing all our water turn-ons. Pratt Street Garden, we rototilled, got it ready for the people down there, and the water's on down there, and also at the cemetery. Senior Center landscaping, that was done with volunteers during April School Week, and with Kenny Regan. We had a broken slide that we replaced at Bates. Trying to do more playground mulch, trying to get it up, all that out into the different areas. And the Fuller Fields synthetic project, I was over there the other day. They put the pad down. Now they're laying down the synthetic grass. And so that's ongoing. Cemetery research information about lots and also about lot sites for some genealogy stuff. Interviewing seasonal summer worker candidates. I still have some openings. Still don't have a lot of people knocking on our door. And plus now we have shift changes at Bowditch. We're working till 6 o'clock right now on 7 days a week. I have staffing here and I will have staffing working till 8 15 as of Memorial Day weekend. If you have any questions for me, I can answer them.
Best guesstimate on when the fuller field will be completed?
Can't tell you that. It all has to do with the installation of the synthetic. They had 2/3 of one of the fields done as of yesterday. I know they're progressing very quickly. The weather's been very good this spring. Not a lot of water, which is not good for us, but it's perfect for them. So that pretty.
That's a question
good.
for you, or if Jim is going to answer. But did they decide on lighting for that facility, or is that still up in the air?
I'll let Jim answer that. No, there's no. I can take that. There is no lighting, and there will be.
Okay.
Not right now. The infrastructure wasn't even put in, to our dismay, but that's just the way it is. I think you would have had to talk to the neighborhood. It would have had a lot of meetings. It's a big take. I mean, I can honestly say that the lights at Framingham State are thrown off towards my house, and I'm kind of down in the gully, but I can see the lights. It's not always. I want to go over there. I wish I had their code, because I'd shut the lights off.
Yeah.
At 12 o'clock at night when they're still on. So.
Thanks, Chris.
Bob, I'm sorry I'm not outside. I wasn't feeling good today, so.
It's all right.
Next time.
Yeah, just to add, yeah, there is no plan that I have heard of to add lights over there. The only thing I have heard of is, concerns about the neighborhood if you do add lights. But I do get it in the fall, it's going to be dark at 5:30. So it sort of defeats the purpose a little bit, or limits some of the availability, but that's what this school decided on.
Good. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, with that said, do I have a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, vote roll call.
Berman, yes.
Jacob, yes.
Yes.
Olson, yes.
Okay. So on to the director's report.
Thank you. Just starting with personnel, we do have a new employee starting on Monday, Isabella Trishoni, in the admin 2 position. We're very excited to have her on board. She's going to be helping out at the front desk. We still have an admin 3 unfilled position, which has been posted, and hopefully that will be looked at relatively soon. In terms of the budget, we've been meeting regularly with the CFO, with the finance subcommittee. We actually met last Tuesday to talk about the budget. We were invited in by the finance subcommittee. Their questions were primarily around better understanding of the Council on Aging program. So I'll be meeting with one of the city councilors to bring him up to speed on what the operations of the Council on Aging look like. The other question had to do with some time employees, getting some of our FTEs back, and some of the justifications around some of our summer and seasonal help, as well as the justification around the beautification coordinator and the construction supervisor. So those were questions, up to date. Of course, city council, the mayor, and our own department always looking for efficiencies in the operations and trying to provide our service the best way we can in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. So we will continue to do that. City project priorities, capital projects, that has been something that has also been brought up. I did meet as recently as today with the CFO. We do have a recommended list of projects that I submitted, 37 projects or initiatives, actually. So those were submitted at the beginning of the year and gone over with the CFO. She has gone through a 5-year master plan and attempted to try to place, funding opportunities at different times for different projects. And I can share that information with you. I'll show you with my screen. if you guys want to access the material yourself, or I can send it over to you. So essentially, if you go to the meeting portal, which is on the Framingham City website, so this is, let's see, here. Under the portal, there's all sorts of meetings here. You look for a city council meeting, and at the bottom of it, it says all financial meeting information can be found here. And you can simply click on that, and you can see, you know, all of the city meetings that are in here. If I go specifically to the finance subcommittee, which I think is, oh, there it is right here. If we go there and then scroll down, there should be an opportunity to link to the fiscal year 23 budget documents. And that'll be citywide. It'll give you an overall view of the entire city. In the budget narrative, it talks about all the different departments and what they're looking through or looking for various appropriations or increases and things like that. So it's very helpful information. Our information starts about page 30. So I'll just get to that. Mayor's office. So just to briefly go over it in terms of the operating budget, Council on Aging is looking to level service. We have the cemeteries, which is looking at an operating budget increase of $27,000 or an 8.05% increase. Loring Arena is looking at a slight increase as well, 68,007. It's about an 8.7% increase. And the Parks Department was actually looking for a total budget increase of 230,000. The primary drivers for these increases, especially in the salary line items, is that the contracts were renegotiated this year. So that affected a lot of salaries that got their increases, contractual increases. The other things that we were looking to do was restore things that we had lost during COVID. In particular, the construction supervisor or beautification coordinator position was not funded after Linda retired. And we had a number of part-time employees and seasonal employees, actually, 25% of them that we were looking to restore. These are the positions that, really help out our full-time staff and allow them to get out there and cut the grass, 2 to 3 times a week, to get out there to all their areas, trash 2 and 3 times a week. And they also help with some of the beautification and gardens and other volunteer efforts that are happening. So I would encourage you, if you can go there. I mean, it does get, I'm not going to get into every single number, but it does get into great detail about what we're trying to do there for all of our projects. And some of the justifications kind of around those. The other sheet that I wanted to share, again, going back to this budget, is to look at the draft CIP program. And it's called the draft and labeled the draft because it's a bit of a living document. And I know the writing is really small here, but essentially what you can see is that we have all the departments that have put in their various requests. And then it is outlined all the way through fiscal year 24, 25, 26, and 27. So for the next 5 years, this is what this recognizes or encapsulates. So you can read through, this is what the library is recommending that they get for capital projects, assessing capital projects and facilities management, what they're asking for, and parks and recreation. And you can see here in the first fiscal year, or in this year, the recommendation from the mayor's office has been for some equipment, not all the equipment we asked for, actually the Toro mower. Winch tennis courts is a priority for the administration right now. The Up-8 playground project, and actually it's been adjusted from Temple Street to Arlington Street. So this is actually 140,000 dedicated towards Arlington Street is the recommendation. We have a number of fence and backstop replacement program and repairs that we would utilize as well. Audio upgrades at Loring Arena, it's recommended that move forward. And then portable stage for cultural events, that was deferred. That was not seen as something that they wanted to support this year. And as you work through the years, and you can see the various projects that we have here, vehicle equipment replacement, a Zamboni, Arlington Street, which was indicated here, that 140 is actually moving down to that. Synthetic field design and working with the high school and the Title IX issues that were going on with some of those facilities. There's open space land acquisition with Cushing Memorial Park, signage program. A new one that was recently added was the Bruce Freeman Trail. There's been conversations with the CSX, and there appears to be the potential to move on the Bruce Freeman Trail, which has been a long time coming. You can see that Mary Dennison Park is queued in there as well. There will be additional monies that will be needed to finish up Mary Dennison Park. Adaptable and accessible playground equipment, tennis and basketball resurfacing, replacing lighting systems over at Bowditch, Danforth Park redesign, equipment and vehicle replacement program, Loring Arena roof replacement, synthetic fields installation, field usage master plan, Danforth Park, beach and landscape design, which involves specifically Waukegan, Roosevelt Park design, Cushing Memorial Park phase design, irrigation wells, fencing and backstop repair phase 3, lawn soccer and baseball field renovation design, Walsh restroom and storage design, Roosevelt Park design, Reardon Park design, tennis and basketball resurfacing, and Cushing Memorial Park phase 6 construction, which would be another level of work over there. So, needless to say, like I said, we have about 37 different capital initiatives right here. Within the first year, when you look at these, we have several, multi-million-dollar projects on our plate that are coming down the road or that we're in right now. The last thing that I will share with you is, let's see, this here. Okay, so this is a list that we've been putting together internally, and this list again it's a draft working document. It's a living document, but these are the things that we go through and the questions we ask ourselves. What are the priority drivers? The priority drivers for these projects are public safety, accessibility, environmental justice, Title IX compliance, information and input from the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Mayor's Office, City Council, and the school department. It also depends on available funding and/or bonding capacity per the CFO, and also the available project and management capacity within the Parks and Recreation Department. So, recently completed projects, 150 Irving Street project was a $100,000 Community and Economic Development Department grant that we were able to leverage to complete that project. And this was in the midst of COVID-19 when there was really no capital funding being awarded. Veterans Park was raised $150,000 private donations, and we were able to complete that park. Currently funded parks, we have the dog park construction, which is a combination of $225,000 worth of Stanton Foundation, some CDBG money. The remainder is city funding to fund that. The Mary Dennison Park Environmental Cleanup, which is about a $20 million city-funded project. Additional funding would be needed, like I said, for these 3 areas of the project that we're working on. Remediation of the environmental cleanup, utility work to fix the old stormwater infrastructure, and the park master plan. We're also recently awarded some earmarks for the Chris Walsh Memorial Trail Master Plan. We received a federal earmark of $230,000 and a state earmark of $250,000. That still leaves a gap of $31,000 city funding, which the CFO is aware of. But that now is moving forward as well. We're in the process, which you saw earlier with the Reardon Park Master Design, essentially an $85,000 contract with any balance going towards future construction. So there'll be a request for construction there in the next year or two. Fuller Athletic Fields, there's $3 million funded through the Fuller School project. So that's happening through that funding. And then Saxonville Beach, stormwater construction. We're working jointly with the Department of Public Works. They have a partially funded grant, 60% design funded, which they've come up with and spent. They're asking for another 40% to finish the design. Right now it's unfunded, but it is requested by the Department of Public Works in the fiscal year 23 capital improvement program. So this year, we were just notified that the whole park design was not necessarily included in this 40% design, but the CFO is trying to carve out a little bit of money so that we can look at the overall park design. Ideally, when we look at a park, we like to look at it in its entirety and figure out, whether it be in phases or otherwise, what we need to do to complete the whole entire project. And this is a project, that we have been trying to do, through the stormwater piece, which we thought could take care of the grass area. We have had, I'll get into this a little bit later, but we did propose a design and redesign of the building. With a lot of the coming out of post-COVID and some of the recommendations and suggestions that we've heard in some of the meetings, some of the information that Shannon has shared. I think, re-looking at that building, I don't know if the previous design necessarily meets the needs of what the park is looking to be in the future. Right now, there's a lot of dead space with storage of docks and things like that. If we're not having docks, how can that storage space be reimagined? I know there's a need for bathrooms. I know there's a need for accessible access to the building, because right now there's stairs all around the building, so it's completely inaccessible. So that would have to be addressed. So we're moving forward in pieces of the overall design. We did talk, at length about access. So that's going in tandem with trying to get the stormwater improvement things happening. And then an understanding from the mayor and the office of kind of where that falls in the capital improvement program. It's not in the 23 program for the complete redesign. So, that's something that, we're going to have to manage. The other things that are in the 23 program that are recommended currently for approval, as I said, was the Arlington Street Playground, the fence and backstop replacement, the Toro Groundsmaster, the Loring lighting upgrades. The cemeteries are looking for their crew cab dump to do their leaf pickups. And then just recently, the Bruce Freeman Trail $6 million project that is maybe one of the mayor's initiatives that is landing in our wheelhouse as well. I will throw in there that additionally, Edgell Grove has its own independent capital improvement plan and program and operations. We've been heavily involved with setting up that program, but they have a request right now to become their own department/division under Edgell Grove, and they would take over all 3 cemeteries. But right now, capital improvements over there include the 5 buildings, all need repair and improvements. Operations support with vehicles and equipment is what they're trying to build by getting a truck and other equipment. And then they are moving to be an independent department or division. Currently unfunded projects. And I just want to state that, you know, these projects will get reprioritized over time. Again, this is a living kind of working document. And as money becomes available, or as we make progress in one way or another, then these, you know, filter into the overall capital program. And they could be changed. Bruce Freeman Trail, as of a month ago, there was not a need for that $6 million, but we've had some communication with CSX, and it sounds like that's a proposition that can move forward. So now that moves to rather high on the priority list, if you can understand how that kind of works. So these are things out there that still need to be funded. The Mary Dennis environmental cleanup, there's going to be, the quotes that were given on here were from 2019. And so these all have to be updated, and now we have to incorporate the comments from the DEP, which is going to add additional costs to the project as well. I'll explain a little bit about Mary Dennison later on in my report. The Chris Walsh Trail construction will happen next after the design. Reardon Park construction will happen after the design. Framingham High, I just received a letter yesterday with a Title IX complaint over at the high school on the softball fields. And so I think in lieu of the report that they had in 2020 and 2021, and some of the recommendations that are getting through, you know, there's going to be some strong recommendations to make facilities more accessible to both males and females, and in the same manner, so that we have equal opportunity for both males and females. One of the things that we are looking at is a complete overhaul of Winch Park potentially, which would offer the additional synthetic fields, close proximity to the high school, multi-use capabilities, perhaps those can have lights, and it might be a real relief valve, I think, for a lot of the other fields in the city, as well as the athletic program, if they do have if they do that park over. Washington Park, we mentioned the bath and playground construction. We're looking at the park, the bathhouse, playground, beach area. The funding is still kind of to be determined, which we've talked about before. The park master plan, you know, needs to be completed. We need to take a look at the fencing. You know, we thought that half the fencing would come down with the stormwater project. The other half could be included in the whole park design. You know, so, you know, I know we're having ongoing discussions about fencing and when and how that should be managed. The bathhouse redesign was driven in the past by a model that we don't currently have. We're not having guards there. I don't know if that's going to bounce back in the near future. We're trying to open up the facility. You know, perhaps that building is reimagined into a different type of facility, or maybe the only thing that's needed over there is a few bathrooms and some storage. And that would take care of it, and that would be far less than trying to rehab that entire building. So I think through the park master planning process that we do with Washington, that we do with all of our other parks, I think a lot of these things will be worked out. You know, so we will, you know, attempt to put all these things, you know, into play over time. And then the playground construction, you know, my question would be, you know, is this the right place for a playground, or do we focus on Andrew Murphy? It is in close proximity. Again, these questions would be flushed out during the master planning process. The cemetery, Arlington Street playground improvements, currently recommended but not approved yet. Temple Street playground improvements, recommended but likely deferred. It still needs some safety fencing over there as well to separate the playground from the road. Not funded, but is a need. Danforth Park playground improvements, Anna Murphy playground improvements, Long's Complex LED light replacement, Long's Complex new bathroom concession storage building, Loring Arena sound system, Walsh Athletic Complex, softball lighting, bathrooms, concession building, Simpson Park crosswalk and parking at the pump station. A community center with a gym and a pool keeps coming up as something that is needed. I've been approached recently about community gardens. People are in need or requesting more community gardens. A lot of the asphalt is in need of replacement in our parks. It's deteriorated over time. It's reached the point where we really need to take a hard look at that because the parking lots are falling apart. You can see that up at Saxonville presently, and you can see it certainly at Loring at the front and the back of the building. The parking lot at the Horseshoe at the skate park, even Bowditch lot, this lot here is starting to see some wear. And then, we have annual vehicle and equipment replacement requests, which fall in this capital improvement program. And lastly, Roosevelt Park, also in need of some work. So as you can see, the list of projects is long. My conversations with the CFO is, she doesn't have the bonding capacity to take on all this at once. From a project management capacity, this office doesn't have the capacity to take on all these projects at once. We're going to have to phase them through and pick away at them. And again, going back to here, as long as we're addressing the public safety, accessibility, the environmental justice, the Title IX compliance, everybody's on board with the priority lists. We have available funding and or bonding capacity, and we have available project management capacity. We'll continue to work through this project list. So I just wanted people to kind of understand the amount of projects that we're working with and the various stages that they're in, and also an idea of the amounts of what these projects will cost. So this is my, working document, so I understand everything that's directly going on. So we did work directly with the CFO to provide, let me see. Stop sharing. So I just want to go back to this, screen again, and this is the CFO and mayor's recommendations. And it's got all the way across the next 5 years with many, if not all of the projects that I've listed on here. Some of these projects have come up as recently as a few weeks ago, gardens and things like that. So yeah, please, if you want to take some time and look through this, and if you have some questions, she's put in essentially across the top, what the recommended would be, what in the fiscal year, what the funding source would be. So what the request is, what the recommended with the funding source for every single year. So she's trying to put all of the requests into the matrix. Like I said, it's just going to get time, take time to work through that matrix. So thank you for your patience on that. That really is a really, kind of in-depth view of kind of where we are with our capital and our operating budgets. Next on the agenda is dog park construction, and we are working with the signage over there. There is some fine tuning that needs to be done. We did have a meeting on Tuesday. They're working on the electrical and the water building. The inspections that need to happen so that we can go ahead and open up the park. All the amenities are in. The shelter is in. The surfacing is in. Some of the fencing is come down. There's a little bit of fencing around the main section of the park as they finish up some of the water and electrical work. So that is still on target for completion in June, and we do have our grand opening on July 16th. So I'll be sending out some more information on that. We'll have a ceremony, a brief ceremony, and then Shannon is working with a group to bring the fun stuff. So we'll have some vendors there. We'll have some food trucks. We'll have a few other things for the participants and their pets to enjoy. So we are certainly looking forward to that. Mary Dennison Park. this. So Mary Dennison Park is, I'll continue with providing my monthly updates. We're now working, we have heard comments back, received them back from DEP, and we're working with the Environmental Council, the city's LSP, the city solicitor, and myself. We're all corresponding with DEP and Mary Dennison Corporation to strike an agreement. It is privileged and confidential discussions. I can't get into great detail of how those discussions are going, but please know that we have, multiple levels of council and environmental specialists looking at this, trying to get the best deal for the city at the end of the day. Really going up against a Fortune 100, company in Avery Dennison. So, please, again, be patient, with the project. There's a lot of things happening in the background, a lot of emails, a lot of meetings, so that we can come to an agreement. Once we strike that agreement, we can move forward into some of the next phases of the project, including construction. The mayor's been has provided an update to the city council. We do try to keep them regularly in the loop. And just as a reminder, the issues that we're working with, asbestos air monitoring plan, and to what degree that asbestos monitoring plan needs to happen, how robust is it? The compensatory storage redesign. So that's looking at, because it's essentially underwater, it's in a flood zone. We can't just push our water into the neighborhood. We have to try to deal with our water within our property. So we're working with ways to do that. And we also need to secure our final activities and use limitations, or an AUL. That's for the final off-park property, which is Ciabra, which is that large building with several stores in it on the northern edge of the park. In terms of Mary Dennison, so that is, where we're at there, and I'll continue to provide monthly updates so that you are well aware of where we are in that project. Chris Walsh Trail, I already mentioned that we have some great earmarks hopefully coming our way from Senate President Spilka's office and also Catherine Clark's office, which will certainly help to go a long way. They value, I think, the project, the value, the connectivity that it has with downtown and Farm Pond. And they see this as a real collaborative effort with the city, with the state, and with the feds to really make this a really great project for everyone. Lastly, on the Washington Beach design update, I met with the mayor about water quality, and we continue to refine our plans of what collectively ourselves, the public health department, the DPW, and who else? Thank you, conservation are all going to work on this water quality issue and looking at it from all different angles. We're looking at it from trying to keep geese off the beach, and how can we try to keep the beach as clean as possible so none of that runoff goes into the water and causes a spike in some of the water readings. The other things, we're looking at the stormwater with DPW, we're looking at septic systems with public health, and conservation is looking at chemical and physical treatments that can be done in the water to help water quality, both with the algae bloom as well as the E. coli issues that we've been having over the past couple of years. Quick bathhouse update. We have a design. Again, it was not funded pre-COVID. I would recommend that this design be revisited as we take a look at Washington and the requests of the neighbors and the needs of the city, whether that building in the way it was designed, does that truly meet the needs? We may want to take another look at that and reevaluate that while we're looking at Washington. No funding was appropriated for the construction of this project. Just to be clear, that it was deferred, like many of our many projects are each year. Lastly, the park and beach redesign, the funding that was requested for the playgrounds for either Washington Beach They were not currently, recommended by the CFO through the playground funding. Again, that is going towards Arlington. She is trying to put together some funding to take a look at finishing the stormwater piece and also taking a look at getting a jump on the park design. So she does want that, she and the mayor and myself, we all want to see that happen, but unfortunately, Waukegan Beach is not currently recommended for funding in the sense of, immediate funding for a playground or the building or something like that. Shannon, I'm just looking at the questions that you wanted to make sure were addressed. I think we hit the first three in my comments. The last thing was keep Framingham beautiful, and we had a meeting on Friday, very productive. We're very thankful for having Keep Framingham Beautiful involved, quite honestly. Trash, especially over the winter, collects very easily. There's a lot of it in the tree lines, in the waterways. This group spent, well over a month, actually still ongoing, collected, well over 60 bags of trash, half a dozen to a dozen tires, all sorts of things around Farm Pond alone. And then they're going out to other parks, schools, train tracks, bodies of water, and doing this all over the city. And really, they're just looking to work with the city, work with the mayor, work with Parks and Recreation to try to get a baseline of parks all cleaned up. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. I was at a beach meeting at 6 o'clock tonight with Learneds, and one of their main concerns was trash, homelessness up in there was a tent found up in the woods, in the Warren Woods. So, we're working with the police to clean that up. I have talked with Chris, and we're going to increase the amount of barrels out at some of the parks. The target parks that they were looking at specifically were Learned's Pond, the Boat Launch, Simpson Park, Mason Park, and Sax Beach. So we'll be deploying a few more trash barrels out there. We're also picking up trash 3 times a week, which I think Chris mentioned in his report. The second request that they had, and that is to support them in please do not litter signs. And so they have about 230 or something like that yard signs that say, please do not litter. And those are going to be popping up all over the city, not just on Parks property and other properties as well. They are cognizant that they don't want those put in grassy areas or things that will involve maintenance or mowing or anything like that. So they're going to try and put them in flower beds or areas that won't necessarily cause maintenance issues. And I told them that we would work with him on that initiative by providing some Parks and Recreation signs at some of our facilities that mirror the terminology, please do not litter. Signs are only as good as the people that follow them. So hopefully we'll get them out there and send a message that really we want people to start throwing away their trash, and we'll be providing more receptacles to do that. Some long-term goals we kind of discussed was, can we have barrels that would maybe prevent people from putting household trash in? They're smaller, they're slotted, maybe they're 3 across. I think you've seen them with recycling trash and, paper or something like that. So I think there, might be a way to work towards looking at our barrels in the future and might there be better ones out there? Again, there's always costs associated with these things, but we can take a look at that. That I think answered all the questions that I had received from commissioners. So I open it up to the commission for any questions.
All I'd like to say is thank you. You guys do a tremendous job. It's a tremendous report. Everything that Buster would want was answered. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So we're not technically on cutting staff that was cut is not.
Right, so Linda Libby retired, so it wasn't a furlough, it wasn't a cut. it was a non-rehire, I guess you would call it, but still, it's the absence of a position now for 2 years.
Right.
And the other one was the seasonals and summer help.
So they were cut when they were being adjusted?
So for this, again, the seasonals, we hire seasonally. So essentially we lay them off at the end of the season and then rehire them. So essentially we were not afforded the opportunity to rehire people. So they weren't people weren't furloughed or cut, although it did negatively affect some seasonals who do like to come back here year after year. So over the 2-year period, last year, we got 25% of those seasonals back. So they cut 50%, we got 25% last year. We're asking for the other 25% this year to fully round out our crew and basically get us back to pre-COVID status. Our parks post-COVID are being used more than ever, and I've seen unprecedented use. And so I feel if people want us to keep up with the trash and the cleanup and the maintenance and the grass and everything that needs to happen, these are essential workers that we need in place.
I fully understand. What's he got? I think we're gonna get it.
I think it's going to be a compromise, like all of the budget. I think it's going to be, we can give you so much. It's going to be up to your operations to decide how best to utilize that funding. They're looking at consolidation amongst many areas, vehicles, maintenance, finance, procurement, admin. They're looking at synergies that can be made throughout the city, and we're part of that process.
Take a breath. Talking.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to compliment the whole staff again. You guys do a tremendous job. There's an awful lot of stuff that's covered here. I don't think anybody has any idea about the stuff that's going on here. And I as a commissioner, really appreciate it. I show up once a month and try to help out and do what I can. I'm just in awe that you can get as much done as you do with what you have. As I said, I know your predecessor used to, just stop doing things and try to keep funding. And I know town versus city, and a lot of that stuff has changed. But thank you. All of us.
Really, you're saying thank you to me, but thanks to everyone. It really is the staff that makes it happen.
Like I said, I still don't know how you get things done with fewer people. Budget's got everything else. Any other commissioners have any comments? Sorry, one other problem. Winch, I think I brought this up last time. Why is school not paying for this? Why are you involved in this? It's a school field. There's a Title IX problem involved. It's certainly their problem. And it's the same thing with the cemeteries. They want to go free, but here we are trying to help them fix their budget. And I remember a bunch of years ago, when I was involved with Little League, we started some, got the league up and run everything else, and they wanted to go away. Once we built the fields, the Winch Park, put in backstops, built everything else, and they wanted to go away. Thank you for the money, believe me. That's what I see happening here with the cemetery as well. I don't have a problem with them being separate, but we're going to fix everything before they go.
So really, we spent an awful lot of time and energy working with the cemeteries. So we had originally 3 historic cemeteries under our purview lane.
Yeah. So
we were very familiar with the operations. When I took road through the charter, and we helped them out. We helped develop capital programs. We helped them understand how the city works with personnel and performance evaluations, procurement, munis, how to even invoice things. So we did, through baby steps, walk them through how the city operations need to work. Apparently at this point, they feel like they have the capacity to take it on themselves.
Yeah.
Certainly we will always be a partner with everyone in the city. We're not going to turn our back on any department that needs a hand. If we can help out, we will. So
I'm just wondering, you're repairing facilities that needed to be repaired over there. If they weren't part of Park and Rec, could their money be used elsewhere? That's my only comment.
Right. Yeah, true. And in terms of which, I think the CFO is looking at it as an overall city need. It is partially school property, but it's also partially our property. There's actually, it's sort of 50-50.
Yeah, but you talk big grand plans, make sure you have master plans and everything else, and we saw an opportunity to build synthetic fields in the junior high school alongside, away from the high school where they have no access to get there. And now we want to put lights up on it. That was, I know it was a bargain, but that's gonna bite us. I could just see down the road that all of a sudden, the bus issues this year, we're going through that. Right. You're still gonna have those bus issues. I mean, you can't find people to drive buses, but you literally have to drive kids to practice now because the synthetic fields are not in the high school. So now we're gonna recreate it.
Right, and so that's why, in the capital improvement program, working with Title IX and hearing the needs of the school department, we are in the process of trying to at least conceptualize what it would look like to bring turf over to that facility. It would save on busing, it would provide something, right outside the doors of the school. They have locker rooms, they have bathrooms. It would make a lot of sense, it has the ability to put lights on, I think there. So I think once at the end of the day, we'll have an inventory of hopefully the Mary Dennison fields, which will be a synthetic multi-use field and baseball / softball field. We'll have the 2 new fields, which will be over at Fuller. And then we'll have hopefully at Winch, enough fields that can accommodate everything. So yeah, I mean, that's again, kind of the grandiose, I mean, we're looking years down the road. I'm a big planner, big thinker. I think, kind of long-term and I think we can get there eventually, but the right planning has to be in place.
I'll stop talking. Anybody else? Any comments?
I have a couple of quick questions.
Yes.
Hold on, I can't remember them. That's why I write them down as I'm thinking about them. Do we know, you mentioned that there's 60% of the design for design, I'm sorry if I'm misquoting this because I can't remember.
Yeah, the planning.
There's 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a 40% gap. Do you have an idea of the order of magnitude on that? Like, or do you have any clue what kind of dollar they're kind of trying to make up?
So I'm not sure if I know the specific amount in their budget. I can ask them or Louise exactly what they were looking for. In my discussion with her today, it was to cover the 40% plus a little bit, and I don't know exactly what that amount is.
No, and it doesn't have to be exact, but if somebody else has a general idea, that's cool too.
Yeah, I think that she and the mayor certainly wanted to show support of the Washacum, project.
Right.
It's certainly when it comes to the stormwater and access and things like that. The overall park design, again, if it involves something with the building and some other aspects, playground and stuff, that takes some more planning.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you also about that bathhouse since we're on the Washacum topic. So it was my understanding that was funded and then COVID happened and it had to be put on hold. So was the construction never ever funded?
Well, no, it was not. So it was proposed and deferred. So it was never funded and taken away. It was never funded.
Okay. And then, so question on Mary Dennison. So you mentioned that you and the city solicitor are in talks to negotiate with Avery Dennison. Dennison, I'm sorry. And my question is, what happens when the city solicitor retires in July?
So, I don't know if the mayor has fully rolled out what his plan is for that. I believe we're looking at an internal city department that can handle legal matters. I think they're trying to put that together. We do have another environmental lawyer that we've worked with in the past that can help in the interim. I don't think the intent is to have Chris Petrini or Petrini and Associates necessarily disappear July 1. I think there's going to be some compromise and have them or his firm stay with at least the negotiation portion of this project to see it through. You know, he's been at it for an awful long time with all of us and has a lot of great knowledge. He does rely on and work with the environmental special counsel and the
Maybe it's a question for the mayor.
yeah. So I would say, yeah, I mean, in terms of, you know, the prior, you know, what his plan is, I don't know specifically, but I know that there are contingencies being put in place so that things don't fall through the cracks.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I guess and the eternal question is kind of what is the thing that's preventing additional forward momentum? So, and I think that that's not going to be a perennial question until it's all said and done. Because even if I can't, or any of the other commissioners can't specifically do something tangible to help kind of grease those wheels, we probably know the folks who can, or the folks who know the folks who can. If it's if we get asked these questions by other folks in the community all the time about, well, that's never going to happen. It's, you know, taken forever, and there's a lot of negative feedback on that front. But if we can help move that along, absolutely, it would be really helpful to kind of know what's the challenge, or is there a technical issue, a personality issue, a scheduling issue, or whatever it is. Then we can try to brainstorm ways to help move that along.
It's legal negotiations right now. So, I mean, that is a time-consuming, expensive process. You know, once they get it through that process, you know, the major delay that we had to deal with leading up to now was that we just weren't hearing back from DEP. Now that we have, now that has initiated the conversations, now we have information to work with. So now the negotiations are happening back and forth, and there's literally dozens of emails a day back and forth about where this project is going. So even though the city isn't necessarily seeing the progress, and I know this sounds cliche, there is progress happening. And you know, the faster that they get through this legal piece, the faster we can actually put boots on the ground and shovels in the ground and get this park built.
Okay, then my last question is on the, well, not question, but on the dog park. So the progress and quality and amenity that will be provided by this dog park, the word is reaching far and wide. So everybody should feel really good about how great it looks. And there was never a question about how amazing it would be. The question was whether and how it would get done and when and all that stuff. So now that we're actually kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, it should feel really good that it's an amazing project, and it's going to be a great amenity for the city. So I do have a question in the numbers that you were showing. It said $60,000 was from the city, and I have a question about that because I did not see the amount that was gifted from the construction company that was using the parcel of land at the bottom of the leaf dump. And then I'm wondering, how did they go over by so much? What caused the number to be so much higher than the estimated? Understanding there's always an estimate is an estimate for a reason. Get that? I'm wondering why exactly.
Why the bids came in, how they did?
Why did it come in so much higher than the estimate? Why did the actuals come in higher than the estimate? That much higher than the estimate? Because even the amount that was gifted from the construction company doesn't close that 60,000 gap.
Right, so we have really, so the construction, the 60,000, because it was donated to the city, and then we took those funds and put it towards the park, I'm calling those city funds. There
Okay.
are additional monies, an additional 30,000 that is getting transferred over from city funds over to this project to help complete it. You know, I don't remember all the bids. I mean, this was months ago. I remember we did go with the lowest qualified bid, which was this one, 208,000. You know, that left us with about a $13,000 contingency at the time, which really isn't a lot of money. As we were going through the process, you do experience change orders that do come up. And we did have a couple of those, which involved, you know, change orders to the electrical, change orders to the water service, you know, things that, you know, that's a natural thing that happens with projects. There's contingencies, there's a couple, you know, a number of change orders that need to happen. You know, for instance, you know, the handles that are out there as spec'd were actually more like playground handles. So they were, you hit them from the top. Unfortunately, that does not make the park accessible. So we had to go back and redesign and say, this is the acceptable fixture that will work for the latches that will make them accessible. So, you know, that's an example of you know, how some of these overages tend to happen. In the design, there wasn't access for vehicle maintenance from one part to one side to the other. So we had to add a maintenance vehicle access gate, which again involves time, materials, and wasn't anticipated in the original, couldn't be covered by the contingency. So it was a change order and we had to find city funds to make that happen. So it's just all part of the project construction process. You
right
out there, we're solving problems and we're trying to stick to the plan as best as possible. But when the plan offers some challenges, we have to manage those. And that's some of these overruns.
Okay, and to be clear, I work in project management, so I'm familiar with, you know, there are always changes and nothing ever goes according to your blue sky plan. There's always something that happens to kind of change your scheduler amount and stuff. I was just looking for specifics on that.
We know about it because it just, we make it happen, you know, so.
Yeah, no, and that's why I asked for specifics on that because you can't know. Cool, I think that was my last question, so that's it.
Tony, Bob, anything? No? Oh, we lost Bob again. Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to accept the director's report, please?
So moved.
No, well, first up, yeah, make a motion.
Sorry, motion to accept the report.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Berman, yes.
Hideko, yes.
Stevens, yes.
Wilson, yes.
Okay. Commissioner's report, anybody have anything? Or do we get everything? We got notes. Anybody have anything to add to this? No? Okay. Correspondence?
Correspondence, I'll just be real brief. I just want to share this one letter that I got just recently, actually yesterday, from Paul Spear. Essentially, you know, concerned about Winch softball field and how it relates to the Title IX consultant audit for not having a fence, scoreboard, fenced-in player area, as opposed to the varsity baseball field, which has a fence, scoreboard, and fenced-in player area. So Paul made it a point to point out these deficiencies in the fields and wanted to make sure that everyone that was CC'd on this, including the superintendent and others, knew the extent of the issue and the concern, in that because it is a Title IX issue, probably should be addressed sooner than later. Not something that can be put off or deferred. So he just wanted to make sure that that these things were brought up to the commission. I know Kathy was also included in this. I can share it with you, but essentially it's, let's get together, let's identify these deficiencies and these concerns, and let's figure out a plan to fix them before too long. So Patty was happy to meet with people and help to discuss some of those options. We'll be meeting with the school on a regular basis about Title IX compliance and what we can do now.
Old and new business, anybody? I think that's a wrap. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Tony, say second.
Yeah, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Berman, yes.
Dacko, yes.
Stevens, yes.
Tolson, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a long meeting. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.